Broadcasting from deep within the heartland of free America, where liberty still shines bright. You're listening to On the Move with Mac Worley III.
Hello, America. It's great to be back with you for another episode of On the Move with Mac Worley. I, of course, am your host, Mac Worley III. Today's episode is titled, Catch Me Assad. How about that? This is episode 158 of On the Move, and I thank you for spending your time and checking out our show. Maybe you're a long-time listener. Maybe you're a new listener. If you are, we broadcast every Sunday at 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. We talk about all things liberty, government, philosophy, and please feel free to join us in the conversation. Anything that's on your mind, you can feel free to give us a call. The number to the show is 360-450-5625. Again, that's 360-450-5625. You can catch us on Facebook.com/OnTheMoveShow. You can also get us on Twitter at OnTheMoveShow. Please feel free to contact us. We would rather have a dialogue than a monologue, but we did come prepared to speak. So, without further ado, let me go ahead and read off some of the featured topics, some of the things we're going to be talking about today. First one, U.S. launches missiles at Syrian base over chemical weapons attack. I have some comments I'd like to make on that. Also, the White House has now said that the clock has run out on North Korean nuclear program. We're going to talk about that. I also want to talk about this Chinese internet giant Tencent that bought up a big chunk, I believe it was 5% of Tesla, and what that means for Tesla and why this is a big deal. Also, I want to talk about this picture that was banned from Russia as extremist. It portrayed Vladimir Putin as a gay clown. So we have that article that we're going to read. Then I want to follow up on a story that I believe we talked about this a couple months ago, about these Austin cops that were shining a light in a citizen journalist's camera so that he couldn't pick up anything that was going on. Well, they have been suspended without pay for violating his First Amendment rights. We have that story. Then I want to get to Dennis Prager. He thinks that it's time for conservatives to praise Trump for his accomplishments. And then Steve Bannon may be on his last legs in the White House. So we got that. Got a lot more. Anything else that you would like to talk about is also on the table, so please feel free to give us a call. Don't forget to check us out at our website, OnTheMoveShow.com. You can get all of our website or all of our podcasts from there, streamed live. And you can also check out our shop. We got lots of original designs there on coffee mugs, T-shirts, hoodies, cell phone cases, things like that. You can follow us on Spreaker.com/OnTheMoveShow. Like us on Facebook.com/OnTheMoveShow. Follow us on Twitter.com/OnTheMoveShow. And subscribe to us on YouTube.com/OnTheMoveShow. And if you are a frequent listener of the program, please feel free to give us a big thumbs up on this episode. I would certainly appreciate it. All right, so we're going to cut to a quick commercial break. When we come back, we're going to dive right into the meat of this. I want to start talking about this U.S. missile strikes in Syria. So you guys don't want to miss what's coming up next. We'll be right back.
Have you visited the On the Move with Mac Worley store? We've got amazing original design t-shirts, hoodies, cell phone cases, and coffee mugs for sale at OnTheMoveShow.com. Just click the shop link on our homepage. You won't want to miss out on the iHeart Open Carry and Bare Arms t-shirts for only $20 plus shipping. Again, just go to OnTheMoveShow.com and click the shop link on our homepage. Your purchases will help make the On the Move show bigger and better. We appreciate your support. Are you an activist who needs affordable flyers or brochures for passing out literature? Or a political candidate who's looking for business cards, logo designs, yard signs, or vehicle decals? Email me, Latasha Worley, for all your graphic design needs at latashaworley@gmail.com. That's LATOSHA Worley@gmail.com. And don't forget to mention On the Move to get a 10% discount on all graphic design services.
Oath Keepers is a nonpartisan association of current active duty military, reserve, guard, veterans, peace officers, and firefighters who will fulfill the oath we swore, with the support of like-minded citizens who take an oath to stand with us, to support and defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. So help us God. Join us at oathkeepers.org.
Broadcasting from deep within the heartland of free America, where liberty still shines bright. You're listening to On the Move with Mac Worley III.
All right, we're back. Thanks for sticking with us to the break. So I have an article here that is a couple of days old, but I want to read it because there's been a few changes since this happened. This is an article from CNN.com. Article's titled "McCain Rips Trump Administration Over Syria Policy." This was updated on April 5th. Let's go ahead and read into the meat of this here. Senator John McCain said Tuesday the Trump administration's decision to no longer prioritize ending the Syrian civil war is another disgraceful chapter in American history. Syrian President Bashar Assad and his friends, the Russians, take note of what Americans say, the Arizona Republican told CNN's Alyssa Camerado on New Day. I believe that's a show she runs there. I'm sure they took note of what our Secretary of State Rex Tillerson said just the other day, that the Syrian people would be determining their own future themselves. One of the more incredible statements I've ever heard. Here's the clip from Senator McCain saying just this.
This movie before, it was when Barack Obama said that they would have a red line, they crossed it, and he did nothing. And Bashar Assad and his friends, his friends, the Russians, take note of what Americans say. I'm sure they took note of what our Secretary of State said just the other day, that the Syrian people would be determining their own future themselves. That one of the more incredible statements I've ever heard, given the involvement of Hezbollah, of the Iranians, of the Russians, and of course the barrel bombing and precision strikes by Russian aircraft into hospitals in Aleppo. So I'm sure they're encouraged to know that the United States is withdrawing and seeking some kind of new arrangement with the Russians, and it is another disgraceful chapter in American history. And
in another news, Gary Johnson asked, isn't Alpo the dog food? And he was later corrected that we're talking about Aleppo, not Alpo. Anyway, so let's first of all take note. McCain, he is a progressive interventionist. He wants to use the American military all around the world to police the world. This is what he believes is our job, and I just respectfully disagree. I don't believe it is our job to go around and topple dictators all around the world. In fact, I think it's worth noting of the effects of what the Obama administration did when they were toppling dictators around the world. It created power vacuums and opened the door for ISIS now, who, as President Obama called the JV team, to step in. So, let's see. Since then, let me read a post here. Let me read a post from the 4th. This is from the 4th. This is before the bombing in Syria, all right? I posted, I actually agree with Trump on this. We should not be trying to topple Assad. We saw how that turned out when we toppled other regimes. The last thing we need in the Middle East is more instability. Creating a power vacuum will only give ISIS or another group the space they need to take over. Our focus should be on ISIS, not Assad. So you guys had a couple of comments here. Veronica says, it is best if Assad remains in power. Jack Ski says he is not a hero. I'm not sure who he's referring to there. Chris says, I'm with you and Trump and Tillerson on this one. Well played, Mr. President. And then shortly after, this was on the 6th, I said, looks like Trump is changing his position on this one. Too bad. I don't support toppling Assad. So let's see what exactly happened since then. First, before we actually do that, let me find out what you all said about this. I posted a poll on our Facebook group. That's On the Move with Mac Worley. It's a public group. You can join it. Please feel free to join it. I post a lot of news in this group, so please feel free to join the conversation. It's this is my favorite way to communicate with you guys. So the article I posted was, should the United States take military action against the Syrian government? And the vast majority of you said no. I'm looking at 29 people saying no. We have 5 people that said yes and 4 that did not know. And we got a bunch of comments in there, so let's just go ahead and read some of these. Joyce said, I need to know more about what is going on. We don't need another war. Michael said, hell no. Tony said military should be right here at home fighting the domestic terrorists. Rory said not unless Syria tries to attack the United States. And let's see. Ken says we can't allow that. Brendan says no, there's no functional government in Syria besides Assad. Our allies are a mix of moderates, secular, and Islamists not named ISIS. The U.S. has spent billions and years trying to fight a force. Trying to build a fighting force to no avail. Yeah, we have spent a lot of money. What did they ended up getting those moderate rebels after billions of training and lots of time. They had 7 operational fighters, none really to speak of. So our job should not be to go around and try to police the world because it's not our responsibility. Look, I understand there's bad people in the world, and I personally don't want to go around just letting people kill other people. But as I've said, and I feel like I've been pretty consistent on this. People are responsible for their own situations. Other people around the world are responsible for their own government. They're responsible for their own self. They have personal responsibility, and if the people in the Middle East, for example, are not ready to come into the world of liberty, essentially, if they're not ready to look at a charter for human rights and build a government that is representative of the people, if they're not willing to step away from Sharia law, for example, then we can't help them. We can help them if they're trying to take these steps. We can help them in that process, but we can't force their hand. They're responsible for their own actions. They have to want it themselves. We can't force them to be free. They have to want their own freedom. Otherwise, they're just going to sacrifice at the moment somebody steps in and says that they can solve all their problems. Or somebody steps in and says, these guys are bad guys, I'm going to make them pay. We can't do that. So let's go into the news here. Let's start with President Trump's statement on what he did in Syria. Here's a clip. It's loading. So.
My fellow Americans, on Tuesday, Syrian dictator Bashar al-Assad launched a horrible chemical weapons attack on innocent civilians. Using a deadly nerve agent, Assad choked out the lives of helpless men, women, and children. It was a slow and brutal death for so many. Even beautiful babies were cruelly murdered in this very barbaric attack. No child of God should ever suffer such horror. Tonight I ordered...
By the way, before he says what he ordered, isn't that an interesting statement? No child of God should have to suffer like this. I don't particularly think that Donald Trump is a very religious person. I'm not really sure why he inserted this in there. Maybe it was a hat tip to the evangelicals that perhaps helped him get elected. Maybe it's him trying to seem less like a bad guy for killing a bunch of people who didn't specifically attack America. I don't know. I'll leave that to you all to decide. I found that one statement to be very interesting. Anyway, we'll pick it up from a few seconds back. Here we go.
No child of God should ever suffer such horror. Tonight I ordered a targeted military strike on the airfield in Syria from where the chemical attack was launched. It is in this vital national security interest of the United States to prevent and deter the spread and use of deadly chemical weapons There can be no dispute that Syria used banned chemical weapons, violated its obligations under the Chemical Weapons Convention, and ignored the urging of the UN Security Council. Years of previous attempts at changing Assad's behavior have all failed, and failed very dramatically. As a result, the refugee crisis continues to deepen, and the region continues to destabilize, threatening the United States and its allies. Tonight I call on all civilized nations to join us in seeking to end the slaughter and bloodshed in Syria, and also to end terrorism of all kinds and all types. We ask for God's wisdom as we face the challenge of our very troubled world. We pray for the lives of the wounded and for the souls of those who have passed. And we hope that as long as America stands for justice, then peace and harmony will, in the end, prevail. Good night, and God bless America and the entire world. Thank you.
Okay, so we've got a couple of things that we have to point out. So first things first, whatever happened to the America First strategy of Donald Trump? You remember that he was going to not get so involved in foreign nations and things that were going on around the world. He was going to have more of a hands-off approach and worry about only things that directly threaten America. Well, he claimed that it's within the America's interest to make sure that the use and spread of chemical weapons is stopped. I would disagree. I mean, yes, it is. It's within our interest to make sure that other countries aren't using chemical weapons, but it doesn't directly threaten us. It's not a national security issue for us. And furthermore, why do we care how people are being killed rather than that they are being killed? We don't step in and stop people from being killed with machetes, but yet we care when 80-something people, if I'm remembering correctly, were killed from the chemical weapons attack. I think, even if we're talking hundreds, what does it matter when hundreds of thousands are being killed? What does it matter? I'm just curious. It's a gee whiz question. I don't know, but. Personally, I don't think that there's really much of a difference between, killing somebody with conventional weapons and killing somebody with chemical weapons. I don't understand why we're conflating it to be something much more. And furthermore, I question the reason why Assad would do this. If you're not familiar, the president of Syria, his name is Bashar al-Assad. He had been winning. Russia and the United States and Syria, they had basically been pushing back ISIS, and they've been winning. So to me, it just doesn't make sense why Assad would go ahead and use chemical weapons against his own people, civilian population, knowing that this would cause the United States to take notice in the rest of the world, obviously. Now I'm not saying that he didn't do it. I'm just saying there better be some pretty good proof that he did do it. And we're going to get to that. And we're going to, chop it down a little bit and talk about it. But I'm a little hesitant to take the U.S. government's word on why they should be able to bomb a foreign nation unless they have some pretty stark and irrefutable evidence. So it just seems to me that Syria, President Bashar al-Assad is not a threat to the United States. Now, maybe he's a threat to his own people. If I were the president, let me give you an idea of the kind of thing that I would be saying instead of bombing Assad. I'd be saying, people of Syria, why are you accepting a government that kills you? People of Syria, if you choose to stand up and fight against all forms of tyranny, if you choose to stand up against Assad, if you choose to stand up against ISIS, if you truly want liberty and you want to be free to live your life without the oppression of government, then you're going to have to take actions yourself. You're going to have to take actions on your own and fight for it yourself. And this goes just the same with North Korea. If you're tired of being oppressed, then you're responsible. It's exactly what our founders did, fought back against the tyrannical government. And in that case, by the way, France, our ally at the time during that war, they weren't going to get involved until they saw that we were actually going to stand a chance in the fight. That is an approach I think that is probably a pretty good one when it comes to nation building around the world. I'm not in favor of this whole us trying to build democracies around the world. I think we should encourage the philosophy and talk about the philosophy around the world and try to export it. But it's not our job to build it itself, to create your government, to topple your dictator. That's on you. If you're willing to live underneath an oppressive regime, that's on you. If you're not willing to fight an oppressive regime, like what's happening in Syria, hundreds of thousands of refugees, I think over 1 million, if I'm remembering right now, have left. I think last I saw it was like 2 million refugees that have left Syria during this war, this civil war. 2 million. Last I checked, ISIS only had a couple of thousand fighters. 2 million people just left. If you're willing to just leave your country behind and leave it in the hands of these jihadists, that's on you. That's on you. But I digress. Let's go ahead and look a little bit more about this missile attack. And in fact, sorry about that. There was a clip here loading. I have there we go. I hate it when they have autoplay clips in articles here. Here's an article on Times. I think this is pretty interesting stuff here. April 6, 2017, article is titled 18 times Donald Trump said the U.S. shouldn't bomb Syria. Article reads, before he was president, Donald Trump wrote that the U.S. should not bomb Syria in a number of tweets from 2013 to 2014. As the White House ordered strikes on Syria late Thursday, several of those old tweets were recirculating on Twitter, especially two in which he called for congressional approval before launching any military action against the Middle Eastern country. Following the regime of President Bashar Assad's use of chemical weapons on his own people, killing more than 80, Trump announced during Thursday's attack in an official statement, years of previous attempts at changing Assad's behavior, this is a clip we played earlier, have all failed and failed very dramatically. As a result, refugee crisis continues to deepen and the region continues to destabilize, threatening the United States and its allies. His stance on U.S. Syria policy under then President Obama dates back to 2013 when Trump began repeatedly criticizing the potential for an American involvement. So before we read the rest of these here, let's go over here. He's talking about how the refugee crisis continues to deepen and the region continues to destabilize, and this is what's threatening the United States and its allies. This fleeing of people from Syria, we could call this a threat to our allies. I don't think it's threatening the United States, the destabilization in the Middle East, unless you're referring to how it's destabilizing, oil and things like that. But oil prices are pretty good. They're pretty much at good price. I mean, it's a lot lower than it was, where it was like over $100 a barrel, something like that. I think last I checked, it was hovering around $50 a barrel. So we're not in a crisis of oil. So the real crisis is these 2 million bodies that are coming up from Syria through Turkey into Europe, and those 2 million refugees are causing a real crisis. It's a lot of people. You're not going to be able to assimilate that many people at once. You're just not. You're going to have these little enclaves of little areas where only these people are. And they're not going to assimilate into whatever culture they're now in. And assimilation is a very important process of the immigration system. It's very, very important. You want the people here to not feel like they're ostracized from the rest of society. You want them to feel like they're part of the greater society. So here's a tweet from Trump here. This is from 2013, June 16, 2013. We should stay the hell out of Syria. The quote-unquote rebels are just as bad as the current regime. What will we get for our lives and billions? Zero. That's what he says. In August 28, 2013, remember, all these quote-unquote freedom fighters in Syria want to fly planes into our buildings. This is the same day, apparently. Why do we keep broadcasting when we are going to attack Syria? Why can't we just be quiet, and if we attack at all, catch them by surprise? Well, he did that this time. I got to give him that. August 29, 2013, no, dopey. He's talking to somebody else. I would not go into Syria, but if I did, it would be by surprise and not blurted all over media like fools. So he's got a bunch of other ones here. You can feel free to check it out on this article on Time. In fact, I will go ahead and share it on our Facebook page, facebook.com/OnTheMoveShow. You can read it for yourself if you're interested. Again, this is a Time.com article. The article is titled 18 Times Donald Trump Said U.S. Shouldn't Bomb Syria. So please feel free to check that out at facebook.com/OnTheMoveShow. Okay, so let's go ahead and move to some other stuff that I find kind of interesting here relating to the Syria situation. Now, let's look at the effects of what happened after this. Like, what happened with Russia here? Here's an article off of NPR.org. It's titled, "After U.S. Strikes on Syria, the Gloves Come Off in Moscow." Article is titled, or dated April 7, 2017. The Kremlin's rhetorical ceasefire is officially over following Donald Trump's inauguration. The Russian government and its loyal media gave the new American president the soft touch, but following the U.S. missile strike on Syria, the gloves have come off in Moscow as hopes for friendlier relations fizzle. Now, I'll read the rest of this in a second, but let's just mention, President Trump has been accused of colluding with Russia and basically that he's a shill for Russia. So let's talk about two things that might give some insight into this situation here. Number one, it would be difficult for the media to continue to say that Trump and Russia are all buddy-buddy working together now after this because, you know, he attacked a Russian proxy. And obviously the Russians aren't liking this, and this is a bit controversial between the two. So this is a point of controversy. So it would be difficult for the media to continue to say that unless, point two, they're going to start claiming, as these, especially like CNN and some of the left-leaning news sources, if they claim that this was all some kind of orchestrated event that would be used to make it look like Russia is not, you know, in the bag, or I'm sorry, Trump isn't in the bag for Russia, so to speak. So it's possible that Trump got tired of all this Russian collusion conversation and wanted to shift the conversation somewhere. This is possible, and maybe that's why he bombed Syria. Maybe it's what he said as far as that they use that they use chemical weapons. Excuse me. Maybe they didn't use chemical weapons at all. Maybe it was the rebels. But anyway, I would find it very difficult, I think, for the media to continue doing this, saying that Trump and Russia are working together or colluding. But anyway, the article continues here. When Rex Tillerson makes his trip to Russia as Secretary of State next week, he can no longer expect a warm welcome. Instead, he will be faced with well-rehearsed accusation of American hypocrisy and double standards. Russian President Vladimir Putin described the U.S. attacks as an act of aggression against his sovereign state and a blow to joint efforts in fighting terrorism. In response to the attack, Russia suspended an agreement with the U.S. to avoid mid-air collisions over Syria and called for an emergency meeting of the United Nations Security Council. So that's something to be concerned about. We may be involved in more, maybe some mid-air collision, or maybe some conflict between Russia as we're getting involved there and they're there. By the way, Russia just brought in some anti-air stuff into Syria, so they're now basically threatening to use that if we try to bomb again, and they will have the ability to. This could put us in a direct conflict with Russia. Again, I have advocated for the longest time, not only are we not responsible for Syria, we're not responsible to police the rest of the world, not our job. Now, if they're making threats on us, if they actually do pose a real threat to us here in America, then yes, we should take some action. But this situation in Syria, this is a civil war. This doesn't affect us. But however, if we're going to do anything, we should be bombing the hell out of ISIS, not Assad, not trying to create a power vacuum that's going to destabilize the region even further. That's not a good idea. But we're going to come back with more from this article after this break. You guys don't want to miss what's coming up next. We got a whole lot more in store for you, and please feel free to give us a call. The number to the show is 360-450-5625. Again, that's 360-450-5625. We'll be right back after this break.
Have you visited the On the Move with Mac Worley store? We've got amazing original design t-shirts, hoodies, cell phone cases, and coffee mugs for sale at OnTheMoveShow.com. Just click the shop link on our homepage. You won't want to miss out on the iHeart Open Carry and Bare Arms t-shirts for only $20 plus shipping. Again, just go to OnTheMoveShow.com and click the shop link on our homepage. Your purchases will help make the On the Move show bigger and better. We appreciate your support. Are you an activist who needs affordable flyers or brochures for passing out literature? Or a political candidate who's looking for business cards, logo designs, yard signs, or vehicle decals? Email me, Latasha Worley, for all your graphic design needs at latashaworley@gmail.com. That's LATOSHA Worley@gmail.com. And don't forget to mention On the Move to get a 10% discount on all graphic design services.
I do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States of America against all enemies, foreign and domestic, and that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same, and that I take this obligation freely without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion, pledging my life, my fortune, and my sacred honor. So help me God. Join us at oathkeepers.org.
Broadcasting from deep within the heartland of free America, where liberty still shines bright. You're listening to On the Move with Mac Worley III.
And we're back. All right, so we're going to pick up right where we left off at this NPR.org article titled, "After U.S. Strikes on Syria, the Gloves Come Off in Moscow." The article continues. It reads, the U.S. rationale that it had to respond to a Syrian chemical attack on civilians was only a pretext for a long-planned missile strike. That's what the Kremlin says. The real estate billionaire has repeated the deplorable experience of his predecessors, the Russian government's official newspaper, Rossiyskaya Gazette, I probably got that wrong, said in a commentary Friday. This isn't the first demonstration of a completely incompetent U.S. approach, similar to a big elephant in a small china shop, to solving the most acute international problems. Syria has been the key to the Kremlin's relations with the United States since 2015, when Russia intervened militarily to back Syrian President Bashar al-Assad in his country's bloody civil war. Isolated internationally after seizing Crimea and backing separatists in eastern Ukraine in 2014, Putin used military might in Syria to force himself back onto the world stage. Like it or not, the Obama administration had to deal with Putin as a Middle Eastern power broker. Military cooperation between the two countries was limited to trying to stay out of each other's way, and joint diplomatic efforts to find a political solution fell apart, mainly because the U.S. and Russia were backing Syrian forces on opposite sides of the battlefield. And now let me explain. Again, one more time, Russia is backing their proxy, the Syrian government, Bashar al-Assad. All right, so, and we're backing, at least we have been backing in the past, we're trying to build our own little force of moderate rebels, which one man's moderate rebel is another man's ISIS fighter, and essentially that all fell apart. Now the two sides that are out there are no moderates. Let's just be clear. There are no moderates in this situation. You have the ISIS fighters, all right, again, ISIS, very bad people, and Assad. Assad, a very bad person. There's no good guys. There's no one that we should be backing. One side definitely deserves our bombs. ISIS, I would definitely agree with that, but it does help Assad. However, that may not necessarily be a bad thing. The reason why the U.S. government doesn't like Assad is because, number one, he's Russia's proxy, and it gives Russia a foot in the Middle East. And secondly, they've been denying, Syria has been denying this pipeline that the U.S. government wants. This is all related to the petrodollar. If you're not familiar with that, it's how we have convinced a lot of other countries out there that sell oil to sell it exclusively in the U.S. dollar. And that forces other countries to get U.S. dollars, other foreign corporations to have U.S. dollars in their control in order to buy oil. And that is beneficial to our economy in several ways that I won't get into now. And it basically props up this whole Ponzi scheme and makes sure that the Fed can keep printing money and all of this other stuff, blah, 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 blah. But they don't. Syria is not going to allow this pipeline to go up through Syria into Turkey and supply U.S. bought oil, U.S. dollar oil, this petrodollar oil. They're not going to allow it to happen. They've denied that. They want it to go from Saudi Arabia through Syria. Not going to happen. First of all, let's also point out Saudi Arabia, they're Sunni. Syria, he's an Alawite, which is a sect of Shia. All right, so. And those guys hate each other. They consider them Sunnis and Shias hate each other. They consider themselves each other apostates, and as a result of that, they think that they should be killed. Their interpretation of their religion: if you're an apostate, you can be killed. Syria is allied with Iran, who's also Shiite. So this is a complex situation in the Middle East here, and you're dealing with a lot of moving parts. But the article here that I was reading continues. With the election of Trump, who said he'd work with the Russians to defeat ISIS, Putin saw an opportunity to revive his idea of forming an international coalition to fight terrorism. The Kremlin has angrily denied that Russia tried to sway the U.S. presidential election in favor of Trump, saying accusations of Russian meddling were meant to distract from the Democrats' own failures. Following Trump's inauguration, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Joseph Dunford, met twice with his Russian counterpart, General Valery Gerasimov, I think is how you say that. Before those contacts, the last meeting on that level had taken place before Russia's annexation of Crimea in 2014. After the U.S. missile strike on the Syrian airfield, Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov said Russia had been informed of the attack in advance through existing channels, but that Putin hadn't been contacted directly. Those who feared U.S.-Russian collusion will now have to fear their collision, tweeted Dmitry Trinin, I think is how you say that, Trinin? Director of the Carnegie Moscow Center, a regional think tank. In a statement on Friday, Russian General Igor Konashenkov said the U.S. assertion that Syrian forces had used chemical weapons on civilians was groundless. He called the effectiveness of the U.S. airstrike extremely low, saying that only 23 of 59 Tomahawk cruise missiles launched from American warships had reached their targets at a Syrian air base. So first of all, let's talk about that for a second. If that's accurate, we got to do some more digging on this here. I'll get back to you guys on this, but if that is accurate, that only 23 of our 59 missiles actually made it to the air base, what the hell is going on with our missiles? Aren't we supposed to be the most sophisticated military in the world? What the hell is going on if we can't even hit a target with half of our missiles? I mean, 46 would have been, if we only launched 46 and we only hit 23, that would have been half. We launched 59 and we only hit 23. That is a bad ratio. Anyway, the article continues. A warehouse, a training facility, a mess hall, 6 MiG-23s under repair, and a radar station were destroyed in the attack, according to Konashenkov. But the airstrip and parked jets were not damaged. So Konashenkov said he hoped there had been no coordination between the U.S. and fighters from ISIS and the Nusra Front, who he said launched attacks on Syrian positions after the U.S. missile strike. It's not difficult to imagine how much the spirits of those terrorists have been raised after this support from Washington, Russian Deputy UN Ambassador Vladimir Safronkov said during Friday's Security Council session. Now imagine that. imagine you are a terrorist. It's hard for you to put yourself in that position, I'm sure. But imagine you're a terrorist and you've been fighting for ISIS all this time and you've been losing. You've been having territory taken away from you. Russian and Syrian forces have pretty much been winning with some limited airstrikes from America at the same time. But now, all of a sudden, the tide might seem to be turning when the United States, in a almost manic kind of attack, decides to just start attacking Assad. Again, yeah, Assad potentially used these chemical weapons, and again against civilian people. But wouldn't the approach have been just, instead of helping one side or another, just to back out of it entirely, to get away from it? If there's no good guys in this situation, if you already know that it's one, this is a binary choice, by the way. This is a one side or the other. If you're going to get involved, if you hurt one side, you are in essence helping another. All right, so you hurt Assad, you're helping ISIS. You hurt ISIS, you're helping Assad. So you can either choose to get involved and pick a side or not. But this whole building up of a moderate force is, in my opinion, a fairy tale, a fantasy, something that is not based in reality. There are no moderate rebels. To help the moderate rebels is to help ISIS. It's what they did in Benghazi when they were giving guns or running guns using the CIA post in Benghazi to Al-Qaeda in Iraq. And Al-Qaeda in Iraq took those guns after we pulled up stakes in Iraq, and they ran in there, and all the Iraqi security forces, they may have, some of them may have fought, but the vast majority of them just dropped their guns and ran away. Because again, we can't fight for them. We can't want them to be free. These are the kind of things that you'll have to do in the Middle East. If you want to be free, you're going to have to fight for your liberty, because there's people that don't want to allow you to be free. Assad's one of them. ISIS is most definitely one of them. But if people aren't willing to fight for their own freedom, then what the hell are we doing there? Why would we even get involved? So the Iraqis had dropped their guns. Al-Qaeda in Iraq picks up these guns, and then they turn into ISIS. That's what they started calling themselves. Then they hit one of the banks over there and became one of the most well-funded terrorist organizations in the world. And now we see the problems that we've had. Well, this is how we got to this point. So, look, I'm not saying that we should just sit idly by while people threaten us, but I don't think these people are threatening us. ISIS is, obviously and absolutely, and we should be doing everything in our power to stop them. But we should also keep in mind that whatever side we pick to bomb, we're helping the other side. Let's make sure that we're clear on that. So if we're bombing Assad, we're helping ISIS. Do we want to help ISIS? I don't. So anyway, the article continues. The change in tone has also been noticeable in Russia's foreign ministry, where Tillerson's upcoming visit had been seen as a first step in getting relations back on track. The experience of John Kerry, Tillerson's predecessor, served as a warning that even a good working relationship with Russian foreign ministry Sergei Lavrov wouldn't necessarily lead to success. The repeated efforts to come up with a ceasefire plan for Syria were scuttled by developments on the ground. Tillerson, who headed ExxonMobil's operations in Russia before becoming its CEO, received a medal from Putin in 2012. On Thursday, hours before the missile strike, Tillerson said Russia had failed in its responsibility to keep weapons out of the hands of Syrian allies and was either complicit or incompetent. Possibly, some people have held on to their illusions about the new American Secretary of State, said the Russian Gazette commentary. Once we're reminded that there's no such thing as friends in business, especially with Washington, whose ill-conceived actions are even more detrimental to Russian-American relations. Before the missile strike, U.S. officials were hoping Tillerson's trip to Moscow would improve deconfliction. Is that a word? Deconfliction? The avoidance of mid-air collisions or other inadvertent attacks on each other's forces in Syria, and counterterrorism cooperation. Now, the Secretary of State's trip will be focused on containing any more damage in relations rather than turning a new page. So let's point out here. First of all, what did this strike do? Let's look at the strike in just small little pieces. First of all, if Trump did just this one strike, what may have this done? for, let's say, North Korea, maybe it will show that, hey, we have a president here that is a wild card. He may actually take military action, unlike his predecessor. Maybe it will show people that Trump isn't working with the Russians. Maybe. Obviously, maybe it did embolden ISIS. That's a potential. There's a lot of reasons why we shouldn't go into this, but with just this one attack, if this was all it was, perhaps it could maybe convince Assad to stop using chemical weapons if he in fact did. I don't know. I do think that if a president is going to use military action against a foreign nation, and this is something that is in the Constitution, but we've changed things a little bit. We've changed our precedent and how we do things now. Presidents now can take unilateral military action for a short period of time without congressional approval. But I happen to think that we ought to have a formal declaration of war before we actually take military action against, especially a nation state. Now, let's also point out, Syria is a foreign nation, and the government of Syria, ran by Assad, invited Russia in. They invited them in, so Russia has every right to be there because they were invited. The United States was not invited. And that's something that I think is important to note. We're essentially a foreign invader if we put boots on the ground in Syria. This is not something that we should be doing, especially without them being a threat to us and without congressional declarations of war. Something that Donald Trump himself said that he supported. So, this is just something that I think, we could say he's being kind of hypocritical. But anyway, let's go ahead and cut to a commercial break. When we come back, I want to dive a little bit more into the Syria thing, and I want to talk about some of the evidence of the attack. What kind of evidence does the Pentagon or the government have that Assad actually used the chemical weapons? And then when we do that, I want to talk a little bit more about North Korea. We've got a lot of other stuff that we're going to get to in the second hour. I want to talk a little bit more about Trump politics. We have a whole bunch of other featured topics that I want to get to. Let's see. The White House saying the clock is running down on North Korean nuclear program. Chinese internet giant 10% buys 5% of Tesla. Tencent buys 5% of Tesla. Russia bans extremist picture of Vladimir Putin as gay clown. 2 Austin cops suspended without pay for violating First Amendment right of citizen journalists. Dennis Prager thinks conservatives ought to praise Trump. Steve Bannon may be on his last leg at the White House. You guys don't want to miss what's coming up next. We'll be right back after this break. Don't go anywhere.
Have you visited the On the Move with Mac Worley store? We've got amazing original design t-shirts, hoodies, cell phone cases, and coffee mugs for sale at OnTheMoveShow.com. Just click the shop link on our homepage. You won't want to miss out on the iHeart Open Carry and Bare Arms t-shirts for only $20 plus shipping. Again, just go to OnTheMoveShow.com and click the shop link on our homepage. Your purchases will help make the On the Move show bigger and better. We appreciate your support. Are you an activist who needs affordable flyers or brochures for passing out literature? Or a political candidate who's looking for business cards, logo designs, yard signs, or vehicle decals? Email me, Latasha Worley, for all your graphic design needs at latashaworley@gmail.com. That's LATOSHA Worley@gmail.com. And don't forget to mention On the Move to get a 10% discount on all graphic design services.
This is Dan Sandini of DaylightDisinfectant.com, citizen journalist, friend of the late Andrew Breitbart, and cohort of James O'Keefe. I listen to On the Move with Mac Worley because the only time he's wrong is when he disagrees with me.
I do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States of America against all enemies, foreign and domestic, and that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same, and that I take this obligation freely without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion, pledging my life, my fortune, and my sacred honor. So help me God. Join us at oathkeepers.org.
Welcome to On the Move.
All right, we're back. So, when we last left, we were talking about the Syrian situation. Again, the poll that you all said, you didn't think that we should be getting involved in Syria. No military action should be taken, according to you. 29 versus 5 said no. 5 people said yes, we should, but 29 said no. So this doesn't seem to be very popular amongst you guys, or girls, I suppose. Let's go ahead and look at the evidence. What evidence do they have that Assad used the chemical weapons? Here's an article on dailycaller.com, article titled, "Here's the Pentagon Evidence Assad Used Chemical Weapons." Article is dated April 7th. Written by Sagar Injeti, I think is how you say that. The Pentagon released a map Thursday that reportedly shows the flight pattern of Syrian aircraft that dropped chemical weapons on civilians Tuesday. The map was released hours after President Donald Trump ordered the U.S. military to fire 59 Tomahawk missiles at a northern Syrian base in retaliation for President Bashar al-Assad's attack. We have a very high level of confidence that the attacks were carried out by aircraft under the direction of Bashar al-Assad regime. And we also have very high confidence that the attacks involved the use of sarin nerve gas, U.S. Secretary of State Rex Tillerson told reporters Thursday. National Security Advisor H.R. McMaster similarly told reporters, "Our intelligence community, in cooperation with our friends and partners and allies around the world, collaborated to determine with a very high degree of confidence precisely where the location originated. And then, of course, the sorts of chemicals that were used in the attack." McMaster clarified that the strike will not cripple Assad's ability to use chemical weapons and is instead meant to send a deterrent message. "The regime will maintain a certain capacity to commit mass murder with the chemical weapons, we think, beyond this particular airfield, but it was aimed at this particular airfield for a reason, because we could trace this murderous attack back to the facility," he continued. So I'm looking at a picture of a bunch of little dots that showed the flight track, apparently, of where these planes went. You know, are you willing to trust the U.S. government about this information? Would our government mislead us with this kind of information in order to get us involved in a foreign war where people aren't a direct threat to the United States? I would say it's been done before in the past. So, I mean, I guess it just depends on how much you trust Donald Trump or the information he's receiving. I don't know. I'm not sitting there in the war room with him. Don't have a clue. What I will tell you is that I don't even care if these are accurate. I give no craps about whether or not this is accurate or not, because even if it was, what is the difference? Who cares if they're sitting, if Bashar al-Assad is sitting there carpet bombing these places? Yeah, that'd be a crime. It's an international crime. It's illegal. Who's going to do anything about it? Does it have to always be us? Where's the UN in this? Those guys are freaking worthless. If the UN wants to get involved, let them. Go ahead, UN. Do whatever you want to do. Why is it always got to be us? Whatever happened to the American First strategy? You know? If this just stops with just one bombing attack, okay, maybe. But I do think that Trump is cutting off this American First alt-right section of his support base. A lot of these people he told over and over and over again. Again, he ran on not being interventionist. He ran on not getting us involved in more wars in the Middle East. A lot of these guys are upset at him over this. So I don't know if this is going to be a continuing thing that we see from the Trump administration, or if this is just a one-time only thing. It's also important to note that wars are typically beneficial for presidents' approval ratings, and Donald Trump has had a very low approval rating. I think last I saw it was somewhere hovering around 37% approval rating. So, this could be a political move to not only change the conversation, but also away from Russian collusion, but also to increase his approval rating. Maybe, maybe not. Just something to think about. Anyway, let's read what Putin has to say about this evidence here. Putin stands by Assad as firm evidence of chemical attacks mount. There's an article on TheGuardian.com. TheGuardian.com. Article is dated April 6th. Written by Matthew Weaver, Rowena Mason, Martin Cholov, and Emma Graham Harrison. Vladimir Putin has doubled down on his support for Syrian government despite the release of post-mortem results by Turkey that confirmed chemical weapons were used in an attack that killed at least 72 people in North Syria. The Russian president attacked groundless accusations that Damascus was responsible for the assault and called for a detailed and unbiased investigation into the deaths, a Kremlin statement said. Russia's defense ministry has argued that Syrian planes were destroying chemical weapons, not deploying them, and said airstrikes targeted a rebel storage depot for toxins. That claim has been widely dismissed as implausible by experts, as firm evidence of chemical weapons use mounted, along with calls for Russia to restrain the Syrian president Bashar al-Assad. Putin's spokesman attempted to put some distance between the two allies. Unconditional support is not possible in this current world, Dmitry Peskov told the Associated Press, adding that Russia could not control the Russian leader. But Peskov offered implicit support to the Damascus regime by repeating the argument that the chemical weapons that killed so many had belonged to rebels. Asked for proof, he said Russia's military presence in Syria meant it had more wide information about what was going on there. The UK Defense Secretary, Michael Fallon, was among those calling on Moscow to restrain Damascus, saying the appalling attack had to be laid clearly at the door of the Assad regime and its supporters. He told reporters the UK is consulting urgently with allies now to see how we can get Russia, which supports the Syrian regime, to put proper pressure on President Assad to stop these attacks once and for all. Western nations have been frustrated by the United Nations' failure to respond to the attack, devastating even by the standards of a brutal civil war, because Russia had deployed its veto in the United Nations Security Council to protect the Assad government from censure. Britain, France, and the United States have asked the Security Council to hold a vote later on Thursday on a resolution demanding an investigation of the suspected chemical attack in Syria, diplomats said. Russia had objected to previous drafts, and it was unclear whether they would support this last draft, which was slightly revised after negotiations over the past 2 days. Turkey, on Thursday, said the first conclusive evidence of the use of chemical weapons had been found, and 3 victims on Tuesday who had died in Turkish hospitals after being brought from Syria for treatment. Now, first of all, let's also point out here, Turkey has a bone in this fight. They got a bone to pick. They don't like Russia. Russia doesn't like them. I would imagine that Turkey, being Sunni, probably doesn't like Assad very much. So let's keep in mind, if people have a bone to pick, if they have an agenda, we may have to be skeptical of the information we're receiving. If we're to determine it credible, if Turkey doesn't like Russia, they don't like Syria. And if we're looking to get involved in the area, trying to get a foothold into Syria as well, if we're using the whole chemical weapons thing, this seems like a familiar song. I feel like I've heard this before. Do you guys remember this in Iraq? Chemical weapons of mass destruction. Yeah, I seem to recall this is something that we've heard before. However, it's also important to note that there were weapons of mass destruction that were found in Iraq. You didn't hear that a lot, but there were weapons of mass destruction. Here's this NBCNews.com article. Secret U.S. mission hauls uranium from Iraq. Last major stockpile from Saddam's nuclear efforts arrives in Canada. This is dated all the way back from the Associated Press in July 5th, 2008. The last major remnant of Saddam Hussein's nuclear program, a huge stockpile of concentrated natural uranium, reached a Canadian port Saturday to complete a secret U.S. operation that included a 2-week airlift from Baghdad and a ship voyage crossing 2 oceans. The removal of 550 metric tons of yellow cake, the seed material for high-grade nuclear enrichment, was a significant step towards closing the books on Saddam's nuclear legacy. It also brought relief to U.S. and Iraqi authorities who had worried the cache would reach insurgent or smugglers crossing to Iran to aid its nuclear ambitions. What's now left is the final and complicated push to clean up the remaining radioactive debris at the former Tuwatha, I can't say that word, nuclear complex about 12 miles south of Baghdad, using teams that include Iraqi experts recently trained in Chernobyl fallout zone in Ukraine. Everyone is very happy to have this safely out of Iraq, said senior U.S. official who outlined the nearly 3-month operation to the Associated Press. So, again, there were apparently weapons of mass destruction, or at least stuff that could be used for weapons of mass destruction. We're talking about nuclear weapons now that Saddam potentially had. But still, I think that the vast majority of Americans have heard this, and they're tired of it, and they don't want to get involved in another war in the Middle East. No matter how they're killing people are just tired of this. So the Turkish Justice Minister Bekir Bozdag announced that the results of the autopsies confirmed that chemical weapons had been used. The state-run news agency reported the postmortems were conducted by officials from the World Health Organization in Adana, southern Turkey, along with officials from the Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons, Bozdag said. Later, Turkey's health ministry said 31 people injured in the attack who had been taken across the border showed signs of being exposed to the nerve agent sarin. Evidence was detected in patients, which leads one to think they were exposed to a chemical substance, sarin, the ministry said in a statement. The medical results from Turkey came as the Syrian foreign minister denied his government used chemical weapons in the attack. He also denied Syria had ever used them, even though reports from UN investigators had confirmed previous chemical attacks by both the Syrian government and Islamic State forces. Speaking to reporters in Damascus, Walid al-Malim said the Syrian Arab army never used chemical weapons and will not use chemical weapons against Syrians and even against terrorists. He also cast doubt on the prospect of fact-finding mission into the attack, claiming Damascus will need assurances that it will be impartial. The attack killed 72 people, including 27 children, and injured 546 others, according to UNICEF, making it one of the worst atrocities in the 6-year war. The post-mortem results add to mounting evidence that the attack involved deliberate use of chemical weapons by a Syrian warplane. Aid agencies, including Medicines Sans Frontieres and medics in Turkey, said patients showed clear symptoms of exposure to sarin. So, let's see. On Wednesday, Donald Trump accused Assad's government of going beyond a red line by conducting the attack, which he said was an affront to humanity. But when asked whether he would consider military intervention to remove Assad, the U.S. president replied, "I'm not saying I'm doing anything one way or another, but I'm certainly not going to be telling you militarily. I don't like to say where I'm going and what I'm going to be doing." So he apparently held to that, and boy, did he give them a surprise. The U.S. ambassador to the UN, Nikki Haley, has warned Russia it cannot escape the responsibility for the attack, displaying pictures of children killed in the attack at the UN in New York. She suggested that if the UN fails to respond to the atrocities, the U.S. may act to stop further chemical attacks by the Assad regime. Theresa May appeared to play down the idea of supporting the U.S. in any military action against the Assad regime, claiming the onus was on Russia to use its influence to stop the bloodshed. What I would say is all those backing the regime, including Russia, need to use their influence to stop Assad from bombarding and dealing with his people in such a way, said the Prime Minister. Rescue workers have gathered soil samples from the scene of the attack and sent them to Western intelligence officials to determine precisely what nerve agents were used. Witnesses said at least one Syrian warplane dropped bombs on Khan Sekun at At about 6:30 a.m. on Tuesday, shortly afterwards, first responders were overwhelmed with patients suffering from acute breathing problems, foaming at the mouth, and writhing in pain. So, again, most of the evidence here of a chemical attack is chemical. They're determining that there's chemicals, in the soil, or at least they're trying to, and looking at the symptoms of the patients coming in from this. But the real evidence that I can see, the real evidence that they're claiming shows that the Assad regime did this is these flight paths. So I guess it just, do you believe the government? Do you believe our government? And do you think this is just a reason for us to get involved? I don't know. I guess time will tell. I hope that we can trust the information we're getting from I was reading something at the same time. I hope the information that we're getting from the government is something we can trust. But even still, I don't think that you all want us to get involved in Syria, and I know I don't, because they don't pose a threat to us, and we're not responsible for making sure bad guys around the world are overthrown. That's not our responsibility, unless those bad guys are becoming a threat to us. And we should talk about that. And we should talk about that in a little further detail. One nation that is doing that, North Korea. We should talk about that after we come back from this break. So you guys don't want to go anywhere. We'll be right back after the break.
Hi, I'm Latasha Worley, and I work with candidates to creatively and effectively communicate their message to voters. I offer professional graphic design services, from yard signs to flyers, from logos to vehicle magnets. Email me today at latashaworley@gmail.com. That's LATOSHA Worley@gmail.com for a quote on items for your campaign. Have you visited the On the Move with Mac Worley store? We've got amazing original design t-shirts, hoodies, cell phone cases, and coffee mugs for sale at OnTheMoveShow.com. Just click the shop link on our homepage. You won't want to miss out on the iHeart Open Carry and Bare Arms t-shirts for only $20 plus shipping. Again, just go to OnTheMoveShow.com and click the shop link on our homepage. Your purchases will help make the On the Move show bigger and better. We appreciate your support.
Oath Keepers is a nonpartisan association of current active duty military, reserve, guard, veterans, peace officers, and firefighters who will fulfill the oath we swore, with the support of like-minded citizens who take an oath to stand with us, to support and defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. So help us God. Join us at oathkeepers.org.
Broadcasting from deep within the heartland of free America, where liberty still shines bright. You're listening to On the Move with Mac Worley III.
All right, so I have an article here, kind of interesting, something breaking, maybe you guys would be interested in. Tillerson, Rex Tillerson here, our Secretary of State, he's got an article here about him, or about North Korea, so to speak, and The Guardian, theguardian.com. The article is titled, Tillerson, China agrees on quote-unquote action on North Korea as Navy strike group sails. Secretary of State President says I don't understand this headline. It doesn't make any sense. Anyway, I'll read the article. Actually, before I do, let me tell you who it's written by. Edward Helmore and agencies, apparently. Excuse me. As the U.S. Navy deployed a strike group towards the western Pacific Ocean to provide a presence near the Korean Peninsula, the Secretary of State Rex Tillerson said China agreed with the Trump administration that action has to be taken regarding North Korea. Tillerson told CBS's Face the Nation in an interview broadcast on Sunday that when Trump and Chinese President Xi Jinping met at the Mar-a-Lago resort this weekend, they had extensive discussions about around the dangerous situation in North Korea. President Xi clearly understands and I think agrees that the situation has intensified and has reached a certain level of threat that action has to be taken, Tillerson said. Tillerson described a shared view and no disagreement as to how dangerous the situation has become. In view of the regional threat now posed by North Korean missile tests and nuclear ambitions, he said the Chinese do not believe the conditions are right today to engage in discussions with the government in Pyongyang. We're hopeful, he added, that we can work together with the Chinese to change the conditions in the minds of the DPRK, the Democratic People's Republic of Korea leadership. And then, at that point, perhaps discussions may be useful. But I think there's a shared view with no disagreement as to how dangerous the situation has become. And I think even China is beginning to recognize that this presents a threat to even China's interest as well. The Carl Vinson strike group, which includes an aircraft carrier, was first scheduled to make port in Australia, but was redirected from Singapore to the Western Pacific. U.S. Pacific Command ordered the Carl Vinson strike group north as a prudent measure to maintain readiness and presence in the Western Pacific, said Commander Dave Benham, spokesman at the U.S. Pacific Command. The number one threat in the region continues to be North Korea due to its reckless, irresponsible, and destabilizing program of missile tests and pursuit of nuclear weapons capability, he said in an unusual, forceful statement. On Sunday, Trump's national security advisor, H.R. McMaster, told Fox News Sunday the strike group had been moved because it's prudent to do it. The news followed a Friday report by NBC that National Security Council had included the return of nuclear weapons to South Korea in options presented to Trump for dealing with North Korea. Killing North Korea's leader, Kim Jong-un, was also presented as an option, NBC reported. Discussing that report on CNN's State of the Union on Sunday, the Massachusetts Senator Ed Markey, a Democratic member of Senate's Foreign Relations Committee, said such moves would cause an escalation of tensions that could lead to a nuclear war. The U.S., Markey said, should work with China to establish direct talks with Kim as the best way to tackle this boiling, bubbling cauldron. On Sunday, the White House said Trump had spoken to acting president of South Korea, Hwang Kyo-ahn. North Korea, meanwhile, called the U.S. missile strike on Syria on Thursday night an act of intolerable aggression. Analysts have said the Syrian strike launched after the use of chemical weapons by the Assad regime contained a clear message for Pyongyang that the U.S. is not afraid to exercise a military option. Appearing on ABC's this week, on Sunday, Tillerson strongly suggested as much, saying of Syria, if you violate international agreements, if you fail to live up to your commitments, if you become a threat to others, at some point a response is likely to be undertaken. So again, this shot out to Syria alone, without any other military action, may be a response to North Korea as well. It's possible, and that may not necessarily be a bad thing, but again, I still think we should have had military approval, congressional approval, and again, I don't think that we should have necessarily attacked them because they're not a threat to us, and helping or hurting Assad helps ISIS, and I don't know about you, but I'm not in the business of helping ISIS. That's what I try not to be in anyway. But unfortunately, I pay taxes, and my government takes that money to pay for things like 59 and Tomahawk missiles. So, FYI, from what I understand, the stock of I think it's Raytheon or Raytheon, something like that. It's a military complex company. Their stock went up after that attack. Obviously, we're going to be buying some more missiles to replace the ones that we shot. So, article continues. Swaggering as a superpower, the U.S. has been picking only on countries without nuclear weapons, and the Trump administration is no exception. A foreign ministry spokesman said, according to the KCNA news agencies, the comments were Pyongyang's first since Trump ordered the strikes on Syria. The U.S. missile strike against Syria is a clear and intolerable act of aggression against a sovereign state, and we strongly condemn it, KCNA quoted the spokesman as saying. The reality of today shows that we must stand against power with power, and proves a million times over that our decision to strengthen our nuclear deterrence has been the right choice. The Syrian attack thoroughly reminds us the fact that it is absolutely dangerous to have any illusions about imperialism, and only military power of our own will protect us from imperialistic aggression. So he's referring to the United States. We will keep bolstering our self-defensive military might in various ways in order to cope with the ever-intensifying U.S. acts of aggression. The North has carried out 5 nuclear tests, 2 last year, and expert satellite imagery analysis suggests that it could be preparing for a 6th. Pyongyang has shown no sign of reining in the missile testing program, ultimately aimed at securing the capability to deliver a nuclear warhead to the continental United States. Asked on ABC if North Korean development of an intercontinental ballistic missile would be a red line for Trump, Tillerson said, "If we judge that they have perfected that type of delivery system, then that becomes a very serious stage of further development." He added, "With no further testing, their program does not progress." And that's what we've asked for before we can begin to have further talks with them. So, interesting, I would say. Very interesting stuff that we have here. Let me see if I can find some other interesting stuff going on here. Okay. We've got, let's see, the clock is now run out on the on North Korea's nuclear program. Let's go ahead and go to that article. White House, the clock is now run out on the North Korean nuclear program. This article is written by Jeremy Diamond, updated April 5th of this year. Okay, so a senior White House official issued dire warnings to reporters Tuesday on the state of North Korea's nuclear program, declaring the clock has now run out on all options are on the table. The clock has now run out and all options are on the table, the official said, pointing to the failure of successive administrations' efforts to negotiate an end to North Korea's nuclear program. The comments came as 2 senior White House officials briefed reporters ahead of President Trump's meeting with Chinese President Xi Jinping later this week in Florida. The briefing took place on the condition of anonymity. The U.S. officials have grown increasingly wary of the pace of North Korean nuclear ballistic missiles programs, as the rogue regime has test-fired multiple ballistic missiles this year at a rapid clip in the first months of this year. North Korea has successfully detonated nuclear weapons in the past, but experts say the country has yet to develop the technology to equip a ballistic missile with a nuclear warhead. Trump has repeatedly said he plans to urge China to use its influence over North Korea to help halt its nuclear program, but warned in a recent Financial Times interview that he would act to stop North Korea with or without Chinese cooperation. China has great influence over North Korea, and China will either decide to help us with North Korea or they won't. And if they don't do that, will be very good for China. And if they don't, it won't be good for anyone, Trump said. If China is not going to solve North Korea, we will. That is all I'm telling you. The senior White House official who issued Tuesday's ominous missive also said North Korea is a matter of urgent interest for the president and the administration as a whole, and emphasized that all options are on the table. Those options could include stepped-up economic sanctions, including against Chinese entities that do business in North Korea, cyber attacks, or military action. Earlier Tuesday, General John Hyten, the commander of the U.S. Strategic Command, which oversees U.S. nuclear weapons and missile defense forces, contradicted Trump, saying China was critical to solving the North Korea nuclear challenge. Any solution to North Korea problem was to involve China, Hyten told the Senate Armed Services Committee. His comments come days after the publication of Trump's interview. Hyten added that he believed Beijing's involvement was critical. He said that he will provide military options to the president to deal with the threat from North Korea. I'll provide those military options, so that's my job, but I look at it from a strategic perspective, and I can see the solution, and I can't see a solution that doesn't involve China. China is the definition of North Korea's backyard. Heighton told the committee, saying that the close economic links between Pyongyang and Beijing made it a pivotal player in curbing North Korea's nuclear ambitions. It's hard for me to see a solution without China, he added. So that's pretty interesting. One thing that again, this is not quite the same situation as Syria, because these guys have a stated goal. North Korea has a stated goal of killing us. They want to attack us. They have a stated goal, first of all, of getting intercontinental ballistic missiles so that they can reach the continent of the United States. So you guys, I asked a question here on our group here. Military action against North Korea, yes or no? By the way, if you're not part of our group, please feel free to join it. It's facebook.com/groups/OnTheMoveShow. Again, this is my favorite way to communicate with you guys. Ernie says, yes, we should take military action. Jimmy says, absolutely no. Gary, he says, so we could wait until the crazy short kid hits us with an EMP or nukes the West Coast. I've never cared for the idiots running the left coast, but I believe the aftermath of an EMP attack would be very entertaining. It's something to ponder. Look, I disagree. I don't care how crazy the left coast is. They're Americans, and I'm not a fan of allowing them to be attacked. Rory says a first strike without unambiguous evidence that a North Korean attack is imminent would be immoral and a war crime. I say no to preemptive war. Now, this is a conversation that Rory and I had, and I thought this was kind of interesting. I told him, I understand where you are coming from. However, is it immoral to shoot someone who is threatening to kill you with a gun laying at their feet while they attempt to pick it up? North Korea has threatened to nuke us repeatedly. That's something I think we ought to not just gloss over. He says, I agree, but do we see their finger poised on the button? Have they demonstrated a delivery system capable of reaching the U.S. mainland? I think legitimacy of a threat is still in doubt from what limited information I've seen. Rory, and I respond, Rory, yes. However, the time to take action will be before they are capable of using ICBMs, right? He says, no, that's preemptive war based on the assumption they will immediately use weapons on us when they make moves to attack, e.g. fueling rockets, moving ships into firing positions. When attack is imminent, then it's time to take action, initiating a war without exhausting all avenues of diplomacy, and then only as a last resort is just crazy. What if, so he starts to give me what if scenarios here, and somebody else says, by that logic, we should be attacking many nations. He's referring to, my gun scenario about somebody threatening to kill you with a gun, laying at their feet while they attempt to pick it up. So I respond to him. I say, many nations. Who else has nukes that are threatening to nuke us daily while working on ICBM technology? I don't think there is an equivalent to North Korea. However, Iran is a close second. Now, let's point out. Look, I'm not a big fan of war, especially preemptive war. However, this is a real threat. This is a real nuclear threat that they would pose to us. It's one thing if they were just looking for nuclear weapons to defend themselves and they weren't actively saying that they were going to destroy the United States. That'd be one thing. But they are. They're actively saying that they're going to kill us. They've stepped up the rhetoric. And it was already pretty high to begin with. So, look, I'm just saying this is the classic example of when a preemptive strike is, in my opinion, necessary. These guys have to be stopped, and I would love it if they would stop themselves. If we could convince them through the use of sanctions or diplomacy to stop trying to get nuclear weapons to kill us. But it hasn't been working. In my opinion, this is the scenario I laid out. Somebody's in a dark alley with you. They're threatening to kill you with the gun at their feet. You're armed. You have a gun in your hand. You're telling them not to pick it up, and they reach for it anyway. Do you pull the trigger? Do you let them pick up the gun? Do you wait until the barrel's pointed at you and their fingers on the trigger? I think that's when it's too late. I think at that point it's too late. The question is, do we want to allow North Korea to get nukes? And if the answer is no, then we have to do something to stop them. This is different than the chemical weapons. It's not like Syria. Assad is building intercontinental ballistic missiles to shoot chemical weapons into an American city. That's not what he's doing. He's using it against his own people. That's immoral. That's a bad thing, but it's not our job to stop it. We're not the world's police. What we are is an interested party in preventing North Korea from getting the ability to do what they've been threatening to do. It makes no sense whatsoever to allow them to get nukes. And moreover, this is a very, very dictatorial regime. So let's read some more of your comments here. Chris says, no, we shouldn't do it. Veronica says, more interference with other nations, no. Sarah says, they need to send one of those drone mosquitoes over there and off that Korean nut job. Let's see. Dick Lapre says, take a look at the North Korean map before answering. Alexander Scipio says, send a nuke to their launch site. No muss, no fuss. Michael says, hell no. Steve says, or let's see, Dan says, let them rip, so I guess he's for it. Alexander says, nuke is launch complex, quick, inexpensive, final. Dan again says, one small nuke, a tactical nuke on his fat butt as well. And Casey's something should be done about North Korea, but we shouldn't be in multiple conflicts. So he's concerned about us having multiple things going on at once. So let's see. We got a notification on. Nope, that's not it. That's a retweet. Okay. All right. So we're going to go ahead and cut to a commercial break. Well, actually, maybe not. Hold on. Let me see if I have any other articles here pertaining to this subject here on North Korea. I think I might actually. Yeah. Here. Let's go ahead and play a clip here. This is about North Korea's nuclear threat keeps growing. So we'll actually talk about. We'll play the clip of what kind of threat they actually do pose. Here we go.
Right now, the Trump administration is facing a dire warning from North Korea in its very first week. The North Koreans are threatening to, quote, pour further misery on the U.S., and a warning coming 49 years after North Korea captured a Navy ship. It's the USS Pueblo. This as South Korea warns that the North is developing nuclear weapons at an unprecedented pace. Gordon Chang is an Asia analyst and author of the book Nuclear Showdown: North Korea Takes on the World, aptly titled, as we point out often. Gordon, so what is notable? We've heard from North Korea on and off over the last several years. Why do you think this particular warning is notable?
Well, this comes at the beginning of the Trump administration. The North Koreans obviously want to test what Trump's intentions are towards Pyongyang. And the other thing that's important about this is that the Chinese are helping the North Koreans. The Chinese have provided nuclear weapons technology, fissile material, all sorts of plans for mobile missile launchers and other things. And so basically we're facing a challenge, not just from Pyongyang, but from Beijing as well. So in the best possible scenario, when you look at the best possible response from the United States with such a threat or an actual missile test, what would that look like? Well, first of all, the United States needs to support South Korea, which is going through an impeachment crisis right now. The president, who is a strong U.S. supporter, is under fire. She probably will be removed from office. That jeopardizes plans for missile defense for South Korea. I think the United States needs to warn China, not only privately but also in public. And we need to start sanctioning Chinese banks because they've been helping North Korea. And we have been shying away from enforcing our own laws. These banks should be unplugged from the global financial system. That would cause a shock. But at least we would be showing Beijing that we were serious about protecting ourselves from North Korea's missiles and nukes. I want to go back to something we mentioned in the introduction, and that is the taking of the ship, the USS Pueblo. I think a lot of our viewers probably have forgotten about this. Tell us a little bit about what happened, why it's significant that North Korea is referencing it. Well, the Pueblo was in international waters. The North Koreans took it. They imprisoned the crew for almost a year. We gave an apology to get it back. One of the crewmen died. Also, not long after that, in April 1969, the North Koreans shot down an Air Force EC-121 reconnaissance plane. 31 crew members died in that incident. That's the largest single loss of American life during the Cold War. The United States did nothing about that. We did nothing about the Pueblo. So the Chinese think that they can, for instance, interfere with U.S. aircraft and ships with impunity. They took the drone last month, and we didn't do anything about that either. So you're saying it's a ripple effect. Donald Trump in the past has put many things on Twitter, and I'm wondering if you could take a look inside the minds of the North Koreans, if you would. Gordon, I know with your work, obviously your book, you've had time to think about this. If you're in North Korea and you're a North Korean leader and you see a tweet from Donald Trump that says this, North Korea just stated that it is in the final stages of developing a nuclear weapon capable of reaching parts of the U.S., it won't happen. That's what Donald Trump said. He went on to say in a following tweet
that China has been taking out massive amounts of money and wealth from the U.S. in totally one-sided trade, but won't help with North Korea. Nice! Exclamation point. When you hear that, what do you think North Korea is hearing, and what do you think of that in general?
Yeah, North Korea is hearing a threat because what they say, Donald Trump says it's not going to happen. And he's not saying, oh, look, they can't do it. The North Koreans are saying, well, look, the United States is going to do something actively to prevent us from launching a missile.
Is that a good thing?
In a sense, if we back it up with actions, yes, it is, because it'll be an act of will, and will show not only the North Koreans, but also the Chinese and the Russians behind them that we are willing to defend ourselves. Now, China, when it sees all these tweets from Donald Trump, thinks that there's going to be a new response. They're going to try to challenge him as well, because they want to knock him off his game. If they can do that early in his administration, they set the tone for 4 and maybe 8 years.
Wow, so you're really watching the next several hours, next several days, Gordon, from that the particular part of the world, North Korea and China.
Absolutely, because this is where it all gets settled.
Well, we're going to see. We'll pay close attention as well. Great to have you on the program as always. Thank you.
Okay, so let's see here. Let's go ahead and close out of that. All right, got a couple other things here before we cut to a break. First of all, let's go ahead and cover this. The world facing Trump. Public sees, this is on Pew Research Center, public sees ISIS, cyber attacks, North Korea as top threats. Let's see, when they're talking about when he takes office, nearly 2/3, 64% view North Korea's nuclear program as a major threat, while comparable shares regard the power of and influence of Russia, 54%, and of China, 52%, as major threats. Let's see. According to this poll, 79% consider the Islamic military group in Iraq and Syria known as ISIS to be a major threat. 79%, 71% consider the major threat from cyber attacks from other countries, and 64%, that's a third threat ranking here, North Korea's nuclear program, and then 54% is Russia's power and influence. So, first of all, I would actually agree with this. Obviously, ISIS is definitely a threat to the United States. They're trying to coordinate more attacks and encourage more extremists to attack us here at home and attack our allies around the world. Cyber attacks are definitely going to be a problem in the future, and I still think that we need to deal with this whole nuclear thing with North Korea. But let's actually ask the question here: how potent are North Korea's threats? This is an article on the BBC dated 2015 September, and they're showing the ranges here of what North Korea is capable of doing. It looks like they're able to reach as far as a corner of Australia, all of New Zealand. It looks like they can barely reach Alaska, and they could potentially nuke all of Russia and China and. Looks like India on this map here. Let's go ahead and go through here. North Korean threats. North Korea has frequently employed bellicose rhetoric towards its perceived enemies. In 1994, South Korea stocked up on essentials in a panic after a threat by North Korea negotiator to turn Seoul into a sea of fire, one of which has been repeated several times since. After U.S. President George W. Bush labeled it part of the axis of evil in 2002, Pyongyang said it would mercilessly wipe out the aggressors. In June 2012, the army warned that artillery was aimed at 7 South Korean media groups and threatened a merciless sacred war. Not again. These people are telling you that they want to kill you. They're telling this is the issue. It seems like a lot of people just don't really want to listen to people when they're telling you that they want to kill you. They just we should ignore that. Look, let's point out this is a nuclear armed regime threatening to annihilate people with nuclear weapons. Does anybody find that to be disturbing? I think I do. I think you should. Anyway, there is also a pattern of escalating threats whenever South Korea gets a new leader, with misogynistic rhetoric directed at South Korea's first female president, Park Geun-hye, after she was elected in 2013. While many observers dismiss the rhetoric as bluster, others warn of the tyranny of low expectations when it comes to understanding North Korea, because there have been a number of serious regional confrontations. If you follow North Korea media, you constantly see bellicose language directed against the U.S. and South Korea. Occasionally, occasionally Japan is thrown in there, and it's hard to know what to take seriously. But then when you look at the occasions where something really did happen, such as artillery attack on South Korean island in 2010, you see there are very clear warnings. Professor John Delury at South Korea's Yonsei University told the BBC. So let's pick apart the bluster. According to this article, in recent years, North Korea has warned of preemptive nuclear attack on the United States in response to the prospect of joint military exercises between South Korea and the U.S., something that we are still continuing to do, FYI. Anytime a nation threatens preemptive nuclear war, there is cause for concern. North Korea is no exception, with its shift in rhetoric from accusing the U.S. of imagining a North Korean ballistic missile threat to vowing the use of its ballistic missile capabilities to strike the continental United States. Again, see, this is not just me telling you that North Korea is doing this. North Korea is doing this. This is a fact. So here's another story that I found kind of interesting. This is on the telegraph.co.uk. North Korea accuses John McCain of blasphemy for calling Kim Jong-un that crazy fat kid. So I found this to be kind of hilarious here because, first of all, if you aren't aware, they treat the Kim family as basically gods, and that would be why they would have called this blasphemy. So this article is written by Nicholas Smith, March 30th, 2017. U.S. Senator John McCain has sparked a war of words with North Korea after describing its dictator Kim Jong-un as a crazy fat kid in a TV interview. Mr. McCain's assessment of Kim, age 33, came just a few months after China blocked internet searches on the taboo subject Kim Fatty III, something not well received in Pyongyang. The Korean Central News Agency, widely viewed as the mouthpiece of the reclusive regime, denounced the remarks as a grave provocation that were a little short of a declaration of war, reported the Daily Caller. Really, calling somebody a fatty is a declaration of war. Mr. McCain told MSNBC's Greta Van Susteren in an interview on March 22nd that the crazy fat kid that's running North Korea is far worse than some of history's worst dictators. He's not rational, Greta, he said. We're not dealing even with someone like Joseph Stalin, who had a certain rationality to his barbarity. A North Korean foreign ministry spokesperson told KCNA that Mr. McCain's comments were blasphemy and that he had offended the dignity of the country and its supreme leader. He added that hardline conservative figures like Ted Cruz, the Republican senator from Texas, were also affronting the supreme dignity of Kim by proposing to relist North Korea as a state sponsor of terrorism. North Korea warned Mr. McCain and Mr. Cruz that they were like puppies, knowing no fear of the tiger. But Mr. McCain appeared to be unfazed by riling a dictatorial regime that is known more for its nuclear weapons threat than its sense of humor. What did they want me to call him? A crazy skinny kid? He quipped from a Twitter account linking to the Daily Caller story. So more rhetoric, and again, no surprise that John McCain, the hawk, the progressive, who he's really excited about going to war with anybody, just because he's right about this. Again, I've said John McCain, he's it's like a broken clock. I've said it before. Even a broken clock is right twice a day. So anyway, here's your comments on this story here. Eric said, well, to be fair, he wasn't wrong, LOL. Some other stuff here that I can't say on the radio. Christopher says, what I don't get is McCain gets away with talking like this to another country's leader, but Bill O'Reilly gets flamed for saying Maxine Waters had a Jerry Brown wig on. Jerry Brown. Not sure if that's accurate. Anyway, even called racist and sexist over the comment. Okay, all right. Talking about something else now. The double standard is bogus, saying something derogatory about Merkel's appearance, and you'll be crucified. Sarah says, even if he is right, he needs to shut up. Christopher says, nothing right about the media these days. They all need to get real jobs. And Larkin says, I have to agree with Eric. He's a crazy fat boy. Veronica says, how about we grab both McCain and Fat Boy by the back of their heads and slam their heads together? Okay. It's an interesting thought. I guess we can run with that. Anyway, we're going to cut to a commercial break. When we come back, we're going to change the subject. We're going to dive more into some of our featured topics here. Let's look over some of the things we're going to talk about. Chinese internet giant Tencent buys 5% of Tesla. We're going to talk about why that's important. Russia bans extremist picture of Vladimir Putin as gay clown. Two Austin cops suspended without pay for violating First Amendment right of citizen journalists. Dennis Prager thinks conservatives ought to praise Donald Trump. And Steve Bannon may be on his last leg at the White House. We're going to talk about that and more when we come back. You don't want to miss what's coming up next.
Have you visited the On the Move with Mac Worley store? We've got amazing original design t-shirts, hoodies, cell phone cases, and coffee mugs for sale at OnTheMoveShow.com. Just click the shop link on our homepage. You won't want to miss out on the iHeart Open Carry and Bare Arms t-shirts for only $20 plus shipping. Again, just go to OnTheMoveShow.com and click the shop link on our homepage. Your purchases will help make the On The Move show bigger and better. We appreciate your support. Are you an activist who needs affordable flyers or brochures for passing out literature? Or a political candidate who's looking for business cards, logo designs, yard signs, or vehicle decals? Email me, Latasha Worley, for all your graphic design needs at latashaworley@gmail.com. That's LATOSHA Worley@gmail.com. And don't forget to mention On The Move to get a 10% discount on all graphic design services.
Oath Keepers is a nonpartisan association of current active duty military, reserve, guard, veterans, peace officers, and firefighters who will fulfill the oath we swore, with the support of like-minded citizens who take an oath to stand with us, to support and defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. So help us God. Join us at oathkeepers.org.
Broadcasting from deep within the heartland of free America, where liberty still shines bright. You're listening to On the Move with Mac Worley III.
All right, we're back. I appreciate you all sticking with us to the break. So, let's go ahead and dive into our next featured topic. Something that if you are interested in investing in the stock market, might be something of interest to you. Tesla, the internet giant, Tesla has been bought, 5% of their company has been bought by Tencent. It's a Chinese internet giant. Here's an article on TechCrunch.com. Article is titled, Chinese Internet Giant Tencent Buys 5% of Tesla. Dated March 28, 2017, written by John Russell. Tencent, Asia's second highest valued tech firm, has bought a 5% share in Tesla. According to a filing, the Chinese firm scooped up 8,167,544 shares for around $1.7 billion to become one of Tesla's largest shareholders. The news itself sent Tesla's share price up 3% in pre-market trading. The purchase was arranged on March 17th, and those now Tencent-owned shares are worth around $2.2 billion at current market value. Tencent is a prolific investor. That holds equity in Snap, this year's hot tech IPO, among others, following an early investment. While that interest in messaging makes sense since Tencent operates China's dominant chat app WeChat, it isn't immediately clear whether the Tesla investment has strategic undertones. An alliance with Tencent could significantly boost Tesla's efforts in China, which is already impressive. Chinese sales accounted for 15% of Tesla's $7 billion revenue last year. Related investments in Tencent's portfolio include electric car maker NIO, which just raised $600 million and was formerly known as NextEv, and Didi, I think it's Didi or Didi, Chongqing, China's largest taxi-on-demand service, which is in the process of buying Uber China and recently launched a U.S.-based research lab. So let's see here. Why is this important to you? Why does it matter that a Chinese company bought up a $1.7 billion worth of shares of Tesla? Well, first of all, any company, any corporation in China that's big is going to be backed by their government most likely. So, China has their government has their hands in everything. So, a Chinese company is in essence a Chinese government-run company, or at least a government-backed company, or a government-controlled company. So this is important because there's a lot of money behind Tencent, and Tesla was really trying to get this get to this mark where they could make $500,000 cars in a year. And it was uncertain whether or not Tesla was going to make it to be able to produce this many cars per year, and this was really the mark that they were trying to do by 2018. This uncertainty of Tesla, whether or not they would make this mark, is whether or not Tesla would survive, and now it seems pretty much assured that Tesla will survive. So, look, I don't really, play in the stock markets, but I would say that there's probably a lot of food on the table left in the Tesla stock prices. If you're an investor or you're looking to invest, it might be something to look into, because right now Tesla stock's somewhere around 300 or so a share, and I think this is going to go up a lot, because they're going to hit this mark now. We've pretty much guaranteed that Tesla's going to stick around. Again, unless the stock market collapses, as I've been saying, which I think that's still coming. But in the meantime, diversify. Have your investments in the stock market. Have your investments diversified in gold and silver. Those kind of things to hedge your bets. But let's read an article here. This is on Reuters. Tesla puts pedal to the metal. 500,000 cars planned in 2018. Article is dated May 5th, 2016. And this is before they bought up, Tencent bought up these shares. Tesla Motors Incorporated said it was stepping up production plans for its upcoming Model 3 mass-market sedan, and would build a total of 500,000 all-electric vehicles in 2010, 2 years ahead of schedule, but warned that spending will ramp up in tandem. So that spending is the problem. They're driving themselves in debt, and the bills are coming. So this is one of those things that we weren't sure if Tesla was going to be able to stick around because of all the debt that they're going in order to hit this 500,000 car projection. The company which 3 months ago aimed to make a net profit in the final quarter of this year, gave no profit target on Wednesday and said capital spending would rise about 50% more than previous forecasts this year to around $2.25 billion. New shares in debt will likely be issued at some point, Chief Executive Elon Musk added. Tesla, which produces the luxury Model S sedan and Model X sport utility vehicle, aims to become a high-volume automaker in a matter of years and is already valued on par with some of the biggest car companies in the world. Shares of the company, run by tech entrepreneur Musk, rose more than 5% in after-hours trade after it announced its first quarter results and beefed up production targets. Musk's ambitions for clean cars as well as rocket and solar businesses have attracted a personal following often compared to that of the late Steve Jobs, but skeptics are also legion. Tesla reported a wider first quarter net loss, although results broadly beat Wall Street's targets. It also said it was on track to deliver 80,000 to 90,000 electric vehicles this year as it accelerated its target for Model 3 output. Tigris Financial Partners analysts Ivan Finseth, who rates Tesla shares neutral, said growing pains were to be expected while Tesla ramps up, but the company's cars were close to perfect. It's going to be challenging. Making cars is hard, and there are all sorts of moving parts, and competition will come from known and unknown places, said Finseth. I will suggest it's going to take a lot of capital, but car manufacturing is a capital-intensive business. Musk has had no problem raising money in the past. So he managed to do this. Musk managed to coordinate with Tencent, and this is pretty much ensuring that he's going to get this 500,000 car a year number. And that's exciting. First of all, if you're interested in getting a Tesla, that means that the price of the Tesla is going to go down because of supply and demand. The more cars that are available, the more people, the more cars that are available, the less the price is going to be. So, I'm pretty excited about this. This is big news. American car company, an American car company, really going to be the future, I think. But let's talk a little bit here about some politics here. We have let's see, a couple more. We got a couple more things that we should talk about here before we get into Trump politics here. Russia bans extremist picture of Vladimir Putin as gay clown. I have an article on this here. Let me find it. There it is. This is on the telegraph.co.uk. Russia bans extremist picture of Vladimir Putin as gay clown. Russia. The article is written by, it doesn't say, by our foreign staff on the Telegraph. Okay. Russia has banned a picture depicting President Vladimir Putin in a heavy makeup as extremist. Russia's Justice Ministry added the image, which depicts the Russian president in lipstick and mascara, to its list of banned extremist material last week. Vladimir Putin as a gay clown meme appeared after Russia introduced a controversial gay propaganda law in 2013. The meme produced a host of images and was even played on by Scottish brewery Brewdog for a special edition beer called "Hello, my name is Vladimir." According to the description posted on the Justice Ministry's registry, the ban applies specifically to a picture posted on Vakhtake, I can't say that word, a Russian social network that is intended to represent the supposed non-standard sexual orientation of President of the Russian Federation and carries the caption, "Putin voters." They say there are lots of them, but there aren't any among the people I know. The picture was one of several posted by a man called Alexander Teskov, which were banned by a court in Tver, a city northwest of Moscow, in May last year. The gay propaganda law, which bans the promotion of homosexuality to minors, was criticized as state-sponsored homophobia and a sop to extreme a conservative constituency. Mr. Putin said at the time that the law was not an attack on homosexuality, which is legal in Russia, but an attempt to protect children. The Putin photograph is the 4,071st banned item on the registry of 4,074 banned materials that includes Nazi imagery, white power slogans, and jihadi websites encouraging terrorism. Earlier this week, reports emerged of systemic torture and killing of gay men in Chechnya. A Russian newspaper and human rights group said this week that they have seen evidence that security forces loyal to Ramzan Kadyrov, the president of the republic, had been rounding up suspected gay men, beating them, and threatening them with death. At least 100 people have been detained and 3 people killed during the campaign, the paper reported. The Russian branch of Human Rights Watch said the account in Novaya Gazette was consistent with multiple reports the group has received from trusted sources over the past several weeks. A spokesman for Mr. Kadyrov called the accusation absolute lies and disinformation, contending that there were no gay people in Chechnya. Oh, none of them, huh? I guess they may have been rounded up and beaten and killed already. The spokesman added, if there were such people in Chechnya, law enforcement agencies wouldn't need to have anything to do with them because their relatives would send them somewhere from which there is no returning. Holy cow, what's going on in Chechnya? I feel bad for those people. So first of all, I think it's funny to criticize any dictator. I'm a big fan of portraying Putin as a homosexual because it's funny. It's very funny. He's not a big fan of it, and I really don't support people trying to restrict the rights of individuals. I think you all know how I stand on that. 2 consenting adults have every right to participate in whatever they want in their bedroom, as long as they're not hurting anyone or taking their stuff. That's where I stand on that. But okay, so that article pretty much the headline told everything on that. Let's go ahead and look at what else we got on the agenda here. Oh, 2 Austin cops suspended without pay for violating the First Amendment rights of a citizen journalist. So let's go ahead and play the clip. This is something that we talked about not too long ago, and I'm loving that there's a follow-up on this. Here's the clip.
An Austin police officer will be off the force for weeks because of his actions in this video. The department says what the officer did, shining his flashlight into the camera of the person recording him, is against APD policy. KXAN crime reporter Leslie Rangel spoke with the attorney for the officer in this case about the punishment he received and why they believe it goes too far.
And now lane 7705 is putting this light in my flash.
Cool, I'm going to give you lawful order now.
At no point was I interfering. At no point was I...
So at this point, they're showing a clip of the video where the officer's just shining a light into the camera of the citizen journalist in order to prevent him from recording. And as we all know, we have every right to record public officials in the performance of their official duties. This is not me saying this. This is a Supreme Court, all right? You got an issue with that, you talk to the Supreme Court. However, there's also no expectation of privacy in public, which means that you can record whatever you want. And that was also determined, or at least adjudicated by the Supreme Court. Here's more from the clip.
Talking to the officer or the driver, I was a good distance away, silently filming.
Video from November shows Officer James Moffrey is shining his flashlight to stop Philip Turner from recording a traffic stop.
This is clearly intimidating me. You're clearly violating my First Amendment right.
The officer involved got 20 days without pay, a punishment his attorney says is harsh.
Throughout the entire process, Officer Moffrey has been humble. He's understood that he did violate policy. He understands.
So this citizen journalist is just sitting or standing on the public sidewalk, recording what is happening in public. Again, no expectation of privacy, and I find it despicable that this officer would do this. He didn't even have. This guy was no threat to him. He wasn't causing a scene. He was just sitting there silently recording. The police officer came over and tried to intimidate and harass him for recording and trying to keep public officials, in check and trying to make sure that for both sides, first of all, the situation is documented because the camera doesn't lie. So this is not a too harsh of a punishment. This is, I think, a little light of a punishment considering that this officer violated the First Amendment rights of this individual. And in fact, I'm really hoping that there's a lawsuit involved with this because nothing will change this kind of behavior except for money. If we keep suing police who step out of bounds and start violating the rights of individuals, if we sue them for these violations, then maybe the police departments will change this kind of behavior and make sure it doesn't happen again. And I'm hoping this sends a message to the rest of the department not to engage in this kind of violation of the First Amendment. Here's more from the clip.
That Mr. Turner got under his skin. He's human just like anyone else.
The officer has been with the department for 4 years, and his attorney says the department should take into account outside factors when determining the punishment.
He was only on the streets for less than 8 months after getting back from Afghanistan and being put back on the streets.
If he was asking me to...
Okay, so let's look at that. He was in the military, serving us overseas, I guess, in Afghanistan, and does that mean he's not qualified to be a cop? No, of course not. There's a lot of police officers that are on the streets right now, coming back from deployments. I don't think this matters. This does not give any kind of evidence to we should cut him a break. No. Again, our government officials, our public servants should be held to a higher standard, and that standard is the Constitution. This is something I find astounding, too, because not only in his duties in the military did he swear an oath to the Constitution, but he also did, again, in his role as an officer, as a police officer. So, no, I don't give that any justification. And let's be clear, if he's not fit to be an officer because of his service in Afghanistan, then maybe he shouldn't be on the street at all.
To stand back or, I'm too close, I can probably see that. But for the flashlight, there's no reason, there's no way they can justify that.
This isn't Turner's first time to film police. Just 2 weeks ago, a federal judge ruled in his favor against Fort Worth police.
Now, the Fifth Circuit ruled on February 16th of 2017 that there's a clear established right to film police officers and that covers Texas, Louisiana, and Mississippi.
But he says his work is not done.
The goal is for a lot of people to pick it up and start filming their own interactions. I'm not going to stop until I see people filming their own interactions with police officers.
In Austin, Leslie Rangel, KXAN News.
Okay, so I'd love to hear what you guys have to say about it. Hit us up on Twitter at OnTheMoveShow or Facebook.com/OnTheMoveShow. You can also give us a call, 360-450-5625. Again, that's 360-450-5625. We're going to go to a commercial break. When we come back, we're going to talk about the Dennis Prager article he wrote about how conservatives ought to be praising Trump. So you guys don't want to miss what's coming up next. We got a whole lot more. We're going to talk about Steve Bannon, how he might be on the outs in the White House. You don't want to miss what's coming up next.
Have you visited the On the Move with Mac Worley store? We've got amazing original design t-shirts, hoodies, cell phone cases, and coffee mugs for sale at OnTheMoveShow.com. Just click the shop link on our homepage. You won't want to miss out on the iHeart Open Carry and Bear Arms t-shirts for only $20 plus shipping. Again, just go to OnTheMoveShow.com and click the shop link on our homepage. Your purchases will help make the On The Move show bigger and better. We appreciate your support. Are you an activist who needs affordable flyers or brochures for passing out literature? Or a political candidate who's looking for business cards, logo designs, yard signs, or vehicle decals? Email me, Latasha Worley, for all your graphic design needs at latashaworley@gmail.com. That's LATOSHA Worley@gmail.com. And don't forget to mention On The Move to get a 10% discount on all graphic design services.
I do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States of America against all enemies, foreign and domestic, and that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same, and that I take this obligation freely without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion, pledging my life, my fortune, and my sacred honor. So help me God. Join us at oathkeepers.org.
Broadcasting from deep within the heartland of free America, where liberty still shines bright. You're listening to On the Move with Mac Worley III.
Welcome to the Overdrive Hour. If you're just joining us, thanks for tuning in. Let me give a shout out to youthrevolt.org. We're over there. We broadcast over there, and the 405media.com, who is joining us for the third hour of the program. By the way, you can all tune in, listen to the whole program at onthemoveshow.com or Spreaker.com/onthemoveshow. Now, let me read an article here from Dennis Prager. I respect Dennis Prager. Let me point out, I don't like to attack our own side. That's not it's not what I'm doing here. I just respectfully disagree in some ways with Dennis Prager. This is an article he wrote on the 4th of April. It's titled, "It's Time for Conservatives to Celebrate This President." Let's go ahead and read the article. He says, "Do conservatives, or non-leftists for that matter, appreciate just how terrific Donald Trump has been as president and how lucky we are that he won the presidency?" I'll agree with that, that we perhaps are lucky that he won, especially over Hillary Clinton. I think we'd be worse off. I will agree with that I think we'd be worse off. But he continues, he says, I don't know the answer. What I do know is that they ought to be deeply appreciative of him and deeply grateful for the luck or providence, and certainly for Trump himself, that he was elected president. First, it is unlikely that any other Republican would have defeated Hillary Clinton. I disagree. I think that pretty much any of our other Republican nominees would have beaten Hillary Clinton because she was a terrible candidate. She was horrible. Really bad. I think Ted Cruz would have beaten her. I think Marco Rubio would have beaten her. I think Jeb Bush probably would have even beaten her, which is saying a lot because he was terrible. Anyway, so he continues. Second, he has not only surpassed many of her expectations, but thus far governed in any manner more consistent with conservative principles than any president since Ronald Reagan and arguably Calvin Coolidge. Now, this is insulting, I believe, to Ronald Reagan and Calvin Coolidge. They were not advocating for a Obamacare Light or a universal health care program. In fact, Ronald Reagan's on record saying his opposition to government-ran health care, universal health care. He opposed it. Calvin Coolidge was obviously on board with cutting spending like crazy. If you're not familiar with Calvin Coolidge, by the way, he cut spending over and over and over again, year after year. It was like 67% the first year he cut spending, 50% the next, and I think 25% the next year after that. Maybe I'm wrong on those numbers. In fact, check me on that, please. Don't just take my word for it. But 3 years in a row, kept cutting spending over and over and over again. He would not have advocated for universal health care. He certainly wouldn't have advocated for getting a free daycare program for women. Would not have done that. But I digress. I say this as one who has vigorously opposed him during the Republican contest for the nomination. I said from the beginning in print and on my radio show that I would support Trump if he became the nominee, but I dreaded his becoming the nominee. His comments about the size of his hands, Senator John McCain as a prisoner of war, and former President Bush lying about weapons of mass destruction in Iraq, his lack of any history as a conservative, and the seeming absence of a filter between his brain and his Twitter app made it difficult for me to imagine him as a serious president of the United States. Nevertheless, once he was nominated, I just as vigorously supported him on the simple and I supported him on the simple and I still believe unanswerable grounds that while no one could be certain of how Trump would govern, we were still all certain about how Hillary Clinton would govern as a leftist. And I truly believe that another 4 years of left-wing rule would mean the end of America as it was founded to be. That is why I found the arguments of the conservatives who were never Trumpers, many of whom I work with, admire and count as friends, not just unpersuasive but incomprehensible. That a conservative could prefer Clinton, which was the only upshot of a never-Trumper position, to any Republican could only mean that we have an entirely different understanding of the damage the left has done and would have done to America and the Western world if Clinton had won. So let's point out here. He's making the argument that it was a binary decision in our election. You either choose Trump or Clinton, which is not the case. You could have voted for anybody. You could have voted for Gary Johnson if you were so inclined. I didn't. I voted for Darrell Castle of the Constitution Party. There were other options because I believe that both Trump and Clinton were progressives. It's my opinion. Trump, I think, in my opinion, had been placating to the conservatives. And I think that time is over. I think the placating to the conservatives is over. And the reason why I say that is because now he's attacking the Freedom Caucus in the House for not going in with him on this Obamacare Light, Trump Care, Ryan Care, whatever you want to say it. It's still a redistribution of wealth program, universal health care, and it is going to be bad. And ultimately, it will still fail. People will still, no matter what program you have, by the way, somebody's going to be uninsured. And in my opinion, if we're going to have anyone uninsured, we might as well have the plan that gives us the most freedom, which is the free market plan that will increase competition and drive prices down. That's my opinion. But this binary decision that Prager is trying to say here, that it was either Trump or Clinton from the Never Trumpers, is wrong. This is a straw man argument. That's what this is. He's claiming that it's Trump or Clinton, and that's not the case. The Never Trumpers were saying we're not going to vote for a progressive, no matter if he has an R or she has a D in front of their name. We're just not going to do that. So. Again, I just want to call that out. He says, I remember Never Trumpers calling my radio show and asking me how I could possibly believe that if elected president, Trump would honor his commitment to nominate to the Supreme Court one of the conservatives on the list of judges which he promised to choose. He has honored that promise. So let me point out here. I would like to say that I didn't think that he would do this. I honestly thought that Donald Trump was a progressive and would not even attempt to put a conservative on the Supreme Court. And I was wrong. I'll be the first to admit I was wrong. And the people that voted for Donald Trump, if you voted for him simply because of the Supreme Court and the importance of it and how you thought we need to make sure that we get somebody on the court that is that's going to be a conservative, and Trump would be our best shot at that. If that was why you voted for Trump, hey, first of all, I'm not knocking you. I am absolutely not knocking you, and I didn't knock you then. I understand why you felt the way you felt. I just disagreed. I didn't think it was likely. I was wrong. I was way wrong, and that's cool. So let me talk about here Gorsuch. This is an article here on the NY Times. We'll come back to Prager's article here in a second. Neil Gorsuch confirmed by Senate as Supreme Court Justice. Judge Neil Gorsuch was confirmed by the Senate on Friday to become the 113th Justice of the Supreme Court, capping a political brawl that lasted for more than a year and tested constitutional norms inside the Capitol's fraying upper chamber. The moment was a triumph for President Trump, whose campaign appeal was reluctant to Republicans last year, rested in large part on its pledge to appoint another committed conservative to succeed Justice Antonin Scalia, who died February 2016. However rocky the first moments of his administration may have been, Mr. Trump now has a lasting legacy. Judge Gorsuch, aged 49, could serve on the court for more than 30 years or more. As a deep believer in the rule of law, Judge Gorsuch will serve the American people with distinction as he continues to faithfully and vigorously defend our Constitution, the President said. The final tally was 54-45 in favor of the confirmation. The confirmation was also a vindication of the bare-knuckle strategy of Senate Republicans who refused to even consider President Barack Obama's Supreme Court pick. Judge Merrick Garland saying the choice of the next justice should belong to the next president. Yet, the bruising confirmation has left the Senate a change of pace. Friday's vote was possible only after Senate discharged long-standing rules meant to ensure mature deliberation and bipartisan cooperation in considering Supreme Court nominees on Thursday, after Democrats waged a filibuster against Judge Gorsuch, denying them the 60 votes required to advance a final vote. Republicans invoked the so-called nuclear option, lowering the threshold on Supreme Court nominations to a simple majority vote. The confirmation saga did not help the reputation of the Supreme Court either. The justices say politics plays no role in their work, but the public heard an unrelenting different story over the last year, with politicians, pundits, and well-financed outside groups insisting a Democrat nominee would rule differently from a Republican one. Gorsuch possesses the credentials typical of modern Supreme Court justice. He is a graduate of Columbia, Harvard, and Oxford, served as a Supreme Court law clerk, and worked as a lawyer at a prestigious Washington law firm and at the Justice Department. He joined the United States Court of Appeals for the 10th Circuit in Denver in 2006, where he was widely admired as a fine judicial stylist. During 20 hours of questioning from senators during his confirmation hearings last month, Gorsuch said almost nothing of substance. He presented himself as a folksy servant of neutral legal principles, and senators had little success in eliciting anything but canned answers. But neither side harbored any doubts based on the judge's opinions, other writings, and the president who nominated him. That Judge Gorsuch would be a reliable conservative committed to following the original understanding of those who drafted and ratified the Constitution. Judge Gorsuch will be sworn in Monday in two ceremonies: a private session at the Supreme Court where Chief Justice John Roberts will preside, and a public event at the White House where Justice Anthony M. Kennedy will administer a second oath. So, I was wrong. I admit it. I was wrong. Okay, so now moving on. I don't think that Trump's going to appoint another conservative to the Supreme Court. Look, he was filling the role for Scalia, who was an originalist. And I think this was a way to cater to the conservatives. But after the conservatives and the Freedom Caucus did not go along with him on his health care act, I don't think that he's in the mood to be placating to them. I think that while he's in office, if he has another opportunity to nominate a Supreme Court justice, I think this one's going to be a little further to the left. This is my opinion, especially as Trump starts to move towards the left, saying that he's going to work with Democrats. This is his words, not mine. He's going to work with Democrats. And especially after I think Donald Trump is casting off his alt-right counterparts as well, his alt-right supporters with Bannon, and we're going to get to that in a little bit. But let's continue with this Dennis Prager argument here about how we should be praising Trump. He says, and given the supreme importance of the Supreme Court, isn't that reason enough for conservatives to celebrate his presidency? Look, I'll give him that. I'll say we should be happy that we elected Donald Trump over Hillary Clinton because of the Supreme Court. And a lot of people voted for him just for that reason, and for that, let's give a celebration. Let's celebrate because that's earned. Look, it's warranted. We rarely have things to celebrate now. It seems like we're losing ground everywhere. So this is good. But the article continues. He has repealed many of President Obama's energy regulations that would have strangled the American economy. That's good. He doesn't believe that carbon-induced warming of the planet will destroy the human race, the greatest of innumerable hysterias the left manufactures and then believes in. Also good. Isn't that enough reason for conservatives to celebrate his presidency? Again, I think one of the main issues here of this article is that because Trump does something good here, we should celebrate his presidency as a whole, which is, again, something that I would like to say to everyone out there. And I've been saying this entire time that Donald Trump has been the president, and when we knew he was going to be the president when he won the election, is that we don't have to look at Trump as a whole. We don't have to say his presidency is good or bad. We don't have to say Trump is good or bad. We just say what Trump is doing now is good and what Trump is doing now is bad. We can take each individual thing that he does and determine whether or not it's good or bad. We don't have to get on board with this hero worshiping thing. Again, let's stop worshiping people as heroes, as infallible. Everyone is human. Everyone of us is susceptible to the same human frailties. The issue here is, what is he doing individually? What are each of his individual acts? What moves are he doing? Is each one of them good? Some of them aren't. Some of them are progressive. Some of them are big government. And some of them are conservative. So let's champion and support the things that he does that are good for conservatism and libertarianism. And let's denounce the things that he does that are going to grow the government, increase the federal government's size, scope, presence in your life, and how they're going to have your hand in the pocket with redistributive policies of wealth. So he continues. He has appointed a woman who, as a billionaire, could have easily devoted her life to enjoying her wealth, but instead has fought for American students and their parents to be able to choose their schools just as the wealthy do, and has taken on the teachers' unions, the only group that has ever given American teachers a bad name. Isn't that enough for conservatives to celebrate his presidency? He has appointed ambassador to the United Nations, a woman who is calling the UN the naked emperor that it is, and now America is backing rather than subverting Israel, and that benighted institution. So, okay, so they're backing Israel, yes, but now they've also backed off. Let's also point out, Trump said that he was for in the West Bank, I believe, the building of the homes, the construction in the West Bank. He supported it. Now he's backed off on that. So he backed off that campaign promise. Isn't that enough to celebrate? Enough for conservatives to celebrate his presidency? No, he backed off of it. Building a wall along the southern border, he is reasserting that the belief that America actually has borders. Isn't that enough for conservatives to celebrate his presidency? Well, jury's still out on that. All right, by building a wall, has he built the wall yet? No, he hasn't. And Donald Trump's at a real risk right now of being a lame duck president. I mean, it's possible that he's a one-term only president with such a low approval rating, and how he's not necessarily getting all the backing. There's division in the ranks of the Republican Party. It's because there is a conservative agenda, and then there's Donald Trump's agenda. And who knows where it's going to fall on any particular issue. We'll see if this wall actually gets built. Again, I've been saying I don't think that wall will be built. I'm actually not a fan of the wall, but I do support stuff that we can do to get people to self-deport, and I'm also in favor of deporting people who are here illegally. Prager continues, and then there's a tax reduction and simplification so that private citizens can keep more of their money and corporations can be far more productive. Isn't that enough for conservatives to celebrate his presidency? Well, it's not really certain if that's actually going to happen. These are things that he said he's going to do, Will he? Will he be able to do that? Another thing also that is affecting the stock market right now, a lot of these investors are speculating that he may not be able to get all the stuff done that he said that he was going to do. And this Trump bump in our stock market has baked in a lot of these things. A lot of the reason why the stock market kept going up when Trump came in, he said he was going to cut taxes, he was going to deregulate and all of his stuff. But who's to say that he's actually going to be able to get anything done, because the Democrats aren't going to work with him. The conservatives hopefully won't work with him on things that are going to grow the government. On things that will shrink it, yeah, hopefully they do. And some of these moderate Republicans, these progressive Republicans, may not work with him either. So, who's to say? That he's going to get these regulations cut, these taxes cut, and as a result, some people in the stock market now are worried that the stuff that was baked in, that people thought was a sure thing that Trump was going to do, may not happen at all. And now he has vowed, after decades of American obsequiousness, I can't say obsequiousness. That's a weird word to throw in there. I have to Google that one. To confront the psychopathic North Korean regime. So yeah, look, I'm in favor of stopping North Korea. I hope that happens, and I'll celebrate him if it does. The American media, I'll celebrate him if it does, depending on how it turns out and what he does. The American media, most particularly its elites, no longer even feigns objective reporting. It's solely an arm of the left and the Democratic Party. Its task being the delegitimization of the Trump presidency. If you live among liberals, it's not chic to express support for Trump, but it is time for us, for more of us. I'm sorry, but it is time more of us did. If people abandon you because you support this president, they weren't serious friends to begin with, and sorry to say, they aren't worthy of you. Somehow, you have to be able to look beyond their support for America and the West destroying left. But they can't look beyond your support for the first conservative president in a generation and the gutsiest perhaps ever. That's your interpretation. I'm going to go ahead and disagree. He said, if the president's approval rating really is in the 30s, this makes overt support of him all the more imperative. Whether you like his tweets or not, his fate is our fate. Look, I disagree. I think it's possible that we could get a runoff against Trump in a primary. I'm kind of hoping that Donald Trump just doesn't want to run again. I'm hoping he's going to take this as a branding opportunity and move forward and do some other things. I think that's probably what he was going for in the first place. But again, let's just be very, very careful of hero worshiping. Let's try not to build people up into something that they're not. Look, he's a man. He's not a god. He's a man. Here's another thing here that Trump's trying to do. This is mildly concerning. This is an article on Fortune.com.
Crumbling in.
Donald Trump is
infrastructure will be replaced.
These things. These articles have videos in them, and they just automatically start playing. Here we go. Fortune.com, Trump says he may use his $1 trillion infrastructure plan as a political incentive. And let's read some of this here. Articles dated April 5th, 2017. U.S. President Donald Trump said on Wednesday he was considering packaging the $1 trillion infrastructure plan with either health care or tax reform legislation as an incentive to get support from lawmakers, especially Democrats. Do you think that the Democrats are going to work with Trump? I do not. I don't think the Democrats are going to do it. Yeah, they love spending money. They love spending money on infrastructure. Yeah, that's great. You're not going to get them to do this. The only way that you're going to get the Democrats to support healthcare is if Donald Trump does what he said in the primary about how the government's going to pay for everything. We're talking about single-payer healthcare. Democrats will get on board with that. Being that Donald Trump has also said that his favorite president is FDR, who was a progressive. It wouldn't surprise me if the real Donald Trump stands up here. And I hope I'm wrong, and I would love to eat some crow on this. Just like I'm eating the crow hand over fist here on the Neil Gorsuch nomination. I didn't think it would happen. I don't think it'll happen again. If another Supreme Court justice goes out, I don't think we're getting another Neil Gorsuch or Scalia-like justice. I think we're going to get a progressive. But I digress. If Donald Trump is what I think he is, which is a progressive, I think that he's going to push more for single payer, and that would be something that he could get support from moderate Republicans, he could get support from Democrats, and that's already the stated goal of Bernie Sanders. He said the stated goal is now single payer. Don't forget it. Trump said in an interview with the New York Times he may move up the unveiling of a plan to rebuild the country's deteriorating roads, bridges, and tunnels, which have been expected this year. I'm thinking about accelerating it. I'm thinking about putting it with another bill. Could be health care. Could be something else. Could be tax reform, Trump said. He will not get support from the Democrats. The Democrats hate him. I'm telling you, he's 37% or so approval rating in the nation, just nationally. But among Democrats, I think he's at 17% or something around there last I saw. He's in the teens. Democrat representatives are not going to work with him unless he 100% capitulates. And maybe he will. Maybe he will to get things done. I don't know, and I hope not. I'm hoping that I'm wrong about this. So let's go ahead and move to another topic here, or at least another thing in the same vein of Trump here. There's been a division, a rift between Jared Kushner and Steve Bannon, and according to an article in the Washington Post, Trump has told them to sit down and work out their differences. Kushner, Bannon sit down and work out differences on Trump's orders. This is an article in the Washington Post written by Abby Phillip, dated April 8th. Annoyed that palace intrigue stories dominated the headlines late last week, President Trump ordered two of his top advisors, Jared Kushner and Stephen K. Bannon, to work out their differences, according to two senior White House officials. The two met Friday afternoon after Chinese President Xi Jinping left Trump's Mar-a-Lago club in Florida in a nearly one-hour meeting arranged by White House Chief of Staff Reince Priebus. According to one of the officials, the meeting ended amicably with both men agreeing to work together to advance Trump's agenda. Kushner and Bannon had increasingly clashed in recent weeks over the policy direction of the White House, including issues such as trade, taxes, and immigration. Kushner, the president's son-in-law, is considered principal among a group of White House aides with more moderate political leanings. Remember, Kushner is a registered Democrat. Allies of Bannon's inside and outside the White House have derisively referred to Kushner, National Economic Council Director Gary Cohen, and Deputy National Security Advisor Dina Powell, and others as the liberal Democrat wing of Trump's White House. Kushner and other aides, worried about Bannon's fixation on deconstructing government, had not served Trump well in the first months of his presidency. As the drama spilled out in the open and onto newspaper front pages, Trump, a devotee of hard copy newspapers, was irritated to find the dispute dominating the news cycle, while his order authorizing a missile strike in Syria and 3 meetings with world leaders faded into the background, according to one senior official. His view is, "I don't like seeing this stuff boil over into the news," the official said. The week ended with rumors of potential shakeup at the White House senior ranks, which the White House vehemently denied. So let's move in from this to another article here. Yahoo.com. Steve Bannon may be on his last legs in the White House, written by Sanma Seth, dated April 8th, 2017. It's been a good week for Steve Bannon, or it hasn't been a good week for Steve Bannon. Trump's embattled right-hand man has seen a slew of negative coverage over the last few days that includes widening rift between Bannon and senior advisor Jared Kushner. News that Trump is increasingly unhappy with Bannon, reports of looming staff shakeups in the White House, and above all, chief strategist's removal from his post on the National Security Council. And remember, Bannon is one of these alt-right guys. He's from the Breitbart, which he's declared to be the home of the alt-right. And then, again, if you're not familiar with the alt-right, it's a bunch of nationalists, uber-nationalists, white supremacists, not all of them, but the core philosophy of it, and I think a lot of the energized base, it consists of these people. So, not very good people. Bannon, famous for his nationalistic policies and confrontational style, is in hot water as Kushner, economic advisor Gary Cohn, and other centrist forces in the West Wing have begun gaining influence in the president's inner circle. circle. Bannon reportedly lashed out at the turn of events and called Kushner a globalist and a cuck, short for cuckservative, a mashup of words, cuckold, and conservative that's frequently used as a slur by the alt-right, and had face-to-face clashes with the president's son-in-law, senior administration officials told the Daily Beast. Bannon has also been the subject of the president's ire in more recent days. The New York Times reported that President Trump is apparently unhappy in the way magazines and talk shows refer to his strategist as President Bannon, as well as credit Bannon has received for setting the administration's agenda. He has borne the brunt of the blame for the White House's failed attempts at implementing a travel ban, as well as a disastrous rollout of the American Health Care Act, the bill Republicans champion as a replacement for Affordable Care Act or Obamacare. The bill was pulled on the floor from the floor of the House before it could come to a vote after it became clear the AHCA would not have enough votes to pass. The Freedom Caucus, a hardline conservative faction of the House of Representatives that some say were responsible for the sinking of the bill, was reportedly put off by Bannon's dictatorial tone when he told them they had no choice but to vote for the AHCA. So that's an interesting story. And again, I don't really think that it's the Freedom Caucus that's the blame. Again, there was only 15 people in the Freedom Caucus that would have voted against it, whereas 18 Republicans not in the Freedom Caucus wouldn't have voted for it. They didn't have consensus. They were trying to force this through, and you see how they used Bannon as a hammer to try to get this forced through, and it didn't work. On the travel ban, Trump was initially on board with Bannon's drafting of the executive order, but grew incensed when it became clear the order would not withstand judicial scrutiny. A source familiar with the president's thinking told the Associated Press. Tensions reached their boiling point on Wednesday when Bannon was removed from his post on the National Security Council at the behest of the National Security Advisor H.R. McMaster. According to White House official, Bannon resisted the shakeup and threatened at one point to quit if it was carried out. "If my talents aren't needed here, I can take them elsewhere," Bannon reportedly said. His allies, however, say that Bannon's removal from the NSC, National Security Council, was a natural next step because he was placed there to keep an eye on former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn. With Flynn out of the picture, they said there was no need for Bannon to remain on the council. Susan Rice operationalized the NSC during the last administration. Bannon said in a statement released after his removal, "I was put on the NSC with General Flynn to ensure that it was de-operationalized." General McMaster has returned to the General McMaster has returned its NSC to its proper function. Following the various blunders that have plagued the administration since its first day, Kushner and Ivanka Trump are pushing hard for a more open process by the interest of the president, not ideology, according to Axios report on Saturday. And despite earlier reports that Chief of Staff Reince Priebus may be replaced, a senior official told Axios that Priebus is on board with the administration's centrist push, and that Reince is staying. So again, they're moving away from the conservatives, more to the middle, more towards the Democrats, more towards progressivism. I've been saying this. They're abandoning the alt-right, they're abandoning the conservatives, and Trump is moving towards the left. Trump is moving towards the left. I say this again, I repeat it. Remember here, from this point, Trump will be moving left. And when he does, you're going to be hearing me say, "I told you so." And when he doesn't, if he doesn't, which I don't think that's true or will happen, I'll eat some crow. I don't see that happening, though. And yet another sign of Bannon's waning influence, sources told Axios. Oh, by the way, another way you know that he's moving away from the alt-right is as I said earlier, I think it's the first hour of the show where we're talking about this, Trump starting to use missiles on Syria and more involvement around the world, Syria, North Korea, militarily. I think it's goes directly against what he told the alt-right, which again, that segment of his base. Okay, anyway, and yet another sign of Bannon's waning influence, sources told Axios that the administration may be shifting towards collaboration as opposed to the combative stance it has adopted so far, collaboration with the Democrats. Although Bannon's allies are desperate to save his job at the White House, arguing that Bannon's demotion will cost Trump dearly with his core constituency that has favored his America First tone. And other officials told Axios, either Steve Bannon becomes a team player or gets along with other people, or he'll be gone. So anyway, I'd love to hear what you guys have to say about it. We're going to have to get those messages after the show, though, because we're wrapping up. I really do appreciate you all tuning in. MacPack, you're the tip of the spear. Thank you so much for tuning in week after week. I love you guys. And don't forget to check us out next week. We broadcast every Sunday at 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. It's 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You can check us out at our website, OnTheMoveShow.com. Don't forget to click the shop link. We got lots of original designs there made for patriots like you. So please feel free to check it out. Also, don't forget to subscribe or follow us on Spreaker.com/OnTheMoveShow. Like us on Facebook.com/OnTheMoveShow. Follow us on Twitter.com/OnTheMoveShow. And subscribe to us on YouTube.com/OnTheMoveShow. And whatever platform you're on, if you've made it this far in the program, please smash the thumbs up button. Share it with your friends and family. Tell them, hey, I think you'll like this show. Check out this guy named Mac. He's crazy, or you like him, whatever. Anyway, that's our show. Thanks so much for tuning in. And as always, know your rights, assert your rights, and get on the move.